Chapter 2189. Forget it, Bifla suddenly said. I'm not as vulgar as you. Chen Zhao gritted his teeth. This guy knew that his cash flow couldn't compare to Chen Zhao's. He directly rejected with such a high-sounding excuse. The audience in the broadcast room was so happy that they couldn't even find direction. But now, no one wanted to cause trouble for Chen Zhao. After all, he could joke with Bifla in such a tone. He should be a rich and powerful person on the same level as Bifla. They didn't know if Chen Zhao could really take out more cash than Bifla. But they were sure that most of the people in the broadcast room, or maybe everyone's wealth wasn't as much as these two. They felt helpless that the two were showing off their wealth. Mr. Gunby, let's forget about our bet, Li Axian said. Why? My broadcast room is a positive one. This bet will make people think that I'm showing off. Li Axian knew that the country's current policy was to purify the internet. It was against vulgarity and vulgarity. Li Axian didn't want to use her head to test the bottom line of the platform and policy. She usually did relatively positive live broadcasts. Fine, I won't make things difficult for you. Bifla readily accepted Li Axian's explanation. Li Axian secretly heaved a sigh of relief. She wasn't as persistent as she looked. If Bifla really wanted to force her, she might give in. Plus, she already knew that Bifla was a super rich man. He was on the same level as the richest man in China. She couldn't afford to offend him. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Goodbye, Mr. Gunby. Goodbye. Li Axian didn't plan on building a relationship with Bifla. Li Axian's mind was always clear. If the other party was a superstar or a famous person, she might put down her pride to suck up to the other party or gain popularity. But the other party was a super rich man. They weren't from the same world. No matter how Li Axian sucked up to him, they wouldn't have any chance to continue talking. Bifla waved his hand. Goodbye. Li Axian ran for her life. Smart girl. How smart can a small internet celebrity be? Chen Zhao's tone clearly showed his disdain for Li Axian. I don't have anything in common with you. Bifla rolled his eyes. Li Axian hurriedly left. Little Xin, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Yeah, I think that super rich guy is quite approachable. They are all big shots. No matter how much I interact with them, I won't become a big shot. Instead, I might become their plaything. For example, just now, that Mr. Gunby was making fun of me. Although little Xin, I don't have much money, I don't want to be played by them. What a pity. I'd be happy to be a monkey for such a big shot. There were also a few keyboard warriors with unfriendly tones, saying that Li Axian was pretending to be virtuous. This was unavoidable. As the old saying goes, when the forest is big, there are all kinds of birds. Li Axian was used to ignoring these keyboard warriors. Let's continue our previous live stream. However, there was no longer that small interlude. The following live broadcast also became somewhat dull and boring. Li Axian also felt that the fans in the live stream were not in a good mood. After that, he ended the live broadcast in a hurry. Li Axian found a seaside restaurant. Istanbul has very long and high-quality beaches. Although it was January, the weather was slightly cold. But it still couldn't stop tourists from all over the world from coming here to enjoy the beach, sunshine, and beautiful women. Li Axian just found a seat and sat down. Suddenly, she saw a foreigner quietly reaching for an Asian's backpack. What are you doing? Li Axian immediately raised her voice and shouted. The Asian and the foreigner were both stunned for a moment. The Asian immediately grabbed his backpack and looked back at the foreigner standing behind him. What are you doing? TCH, the foreigner snorted and swaggered away. This foreigner was probably a local tyrant. So he was quite arrogant. To him, Li Axan was the foreigner. So he didn't care about being caught on the spot. Of course, no matter how arrogant he was, he wouldn't dare to rob her openly. So the most he could do was leave while cursing. "Hello, miss, thank you." The man came to Li Axan. "You're welcome. We're all in a foreign country and need to help each other," Li Axan said politely. "I wonder if I have the honor to know your name." "My name is Li Axan, not Musi Li. It's Li as in dawn, Axan as in prosperity. I'm Zhou. Are you here to travel? Or are you on a business trip?" Li Axan asked. "Business trip," Zhou replied. The two met old friends in a foreign place, so they sat down and had a meal together. Li Axan also learned that Zhou was an employee of a big company. This time, he came to Istanbul with his leader on a business trip. The two chatted happily and even exchanged contact information. "I didn't expect you to be a streamer. If you didn't tell me, I would have thought you were a big star. You flatter a girl the first time you meet her. I guess you've cheated a lot of girls with this trick." "I swear to God, I just said it casually. I learned it from books. You're the first girl to let me practice it." In fact, Li Axan felt sweet in her heart. She wasn't the kind of love-struck fool who couldn't move when she saw a man. She also had a certain amount of love experience. But Zhou gave her a very good impression. Zhou was witty and humorous, and his looks were quite elegant. Even Li Axan was a little moved. Of course, it was nonsense to say that it was love at first sight and she would immediately sacrifice her life for him. But Li Axan felt that Zhou was the type that she could go further with. She just didn't know what Zhou was thinking. "Let's go to the coastal park over there," Zhou took the initiative to invite her. He also had a good impression of Li Axan. He was now secretly confirming whether Li Axan was interested in him or not. Now the two only needed to break through the paper window. There were a lot of people on the coast in the evening. The street lights on the coast were already lit. Unconsciously, Li Axan and Zhou hands were already holding each other's hands. It was hard to count who held the other's hand first. However, at that moment, 3 uninvited guests blocked their way. One of them was the thief who wanted to steal from Zhou's backpack. The other 2 didn't seem to be the same kind of people as the thief. One of them was wearing a suit and leather shoes, and the other was dressed like a psychic. "It's them. It's that man. I feel it. It's on him." At this time, the man in the suit came up and said in English, "Hand over the demon pearl." Chapter 2190. Confused, Li Axan turned to look at Zhou. "What demonic pearl?" Zhou's expression was ugly. He did not answer Li Axan's question. "Do you want to fight here? Hurry up. Cut the crap," the man in the suit growled impatiently. It seemed that the 3 of them were very impatient, as if they were in a hurry. "You won't make it." "Why?" "You'll be severely punished if you fight here," Zhou said. "No matter what, you'll be eliminated. Instead of being eliminated awkwardly, it's better to be calm." At that moment, 2 SUVs stopped beside them. Everyone was stunned. Then, a few people jumped out of the car. Li Axan realized that she had met these people on the plane. They seemed to be Qin Zhao's subordinates. "They have it on them," Jolanash said. When the 3 in Zhou saw the people in the SUVs, their expressions changed. Without wasting any time, Gaia got out of the car and blocked their way. The 3 wanted to resist, but Gaia beat them down with a few punches and kicks. Then Gaia searched their bodies. Angelit blocked Zhou's way. "Sir, please hand over your things." What do you want? I know your boss. Don't do anything stupid, Li Axan shouted immediately. She did not know what these people had been trying to steal. However, it was clearly immoral and against the law. But they ignored Li Axan's shout. Zhou Ong stood behind Li Axan and formed a seal with both hands. But before he finished forming the hand seal, Engelit had already made his move. Engelit interrupted Zhou Ang's hand seal and pressed him to the ground. He quickly found 2 demonic pearls. Got it. Let's go, Engelit said. Zhou, are you okay? Seeing Zhou pressed to the ground, Li Axan immediately turned around and helped him up. The others left too. What did they steal from you? Zhou looked like he was about to cry, but facing Li Axan's question, he shook his head and pretended to be strong. Still, he pretended to be strong and shook his head. It's nothing. Forget it. It's just lost. No, I can't just let it go like this. I know who they are. I'll get them back for you. No, there's no need. Zhou grabbed Li Axan's wrist. That thing is not very important. Are you sure you don't need to call the police? Zhou smiled bitterly. He didn't know how to explain it to Li Axan. Actually, that thing isn't worth much. Then why did they snatch it? Li Axan's face was full of confusion. Suddenly, she seemed to have an epiphany. Ah! Could it be an important scientific research result? Or some other data? Let's put it this way. The other 2 groups of people and I are participating in a competition. This competition requires us to collect that thing, and there are requirements for both quantity and quality. After the competition is over, there are still a large number of items that we haven't collected. If this trend continues, then the competition can't continue. So, the organizers have given us a certain amount of time. Before 12:00 tonight, if we can snatch enough items from other contestants and teams, then we can pass this competition. If we can't reach the required quantity, then we will be considered to have failed and will be eliminated. What kind of competition is this? So strange. Is it an illegal competition? No, although this competition is relatively private, the government is also involved, Zhou said. That is to say, those 2 groups of people actually snatched it legally. You can say that. Then, won't it be a problem if your item is snatched? Zhou touched his nose and said with a bitter smile, it's fine. In fact, my leader and I are acting as bait. Our loot has actually been hidden. What kind of competition is this? It's a battle of wits and courage. Where can I watch the competition? Li Axan was interested. As long as it's not illegal. But why haven't I heard of this competition? Is it a secret competition? Not open to the public. Not completely open to the public. Only a small group of people can watch. What conditions do I have to meet? Do I meet the conditions? Zhou smiled bitterly and shook his head. No. All right. Li Axan hesitated for a moment before saying, are those people really not part of a criminal organization? When I saw them at the airport, they had a conflict with a group of men in black. In the end, at a corner, they directly dragged the group of men in black. I saw it with my own eyes. Those men in black that you mentioned should also be contestants of this competition. They can be considered competitors. Is it allowed by the organizers to do dirty tricks outside the competition? I don't support it, but I don't oppose it either. You're not some special forces competition or super agent competition, are you? No, we don't serve the government. In fact, people who serve the government are not allowed to participate, nor can they get an invitation. Anyway, as long as it's not illegal, it's fine. Zhou was secretly happy. He could hear the subtext in Li Xian's words. I swear, I've never done anything against the law. How many more? Gaia asked. Right now, we have a 9 fusion demon pearl, which can be counted as 512 beads. Since we came out of the wasteland market, it's been 6 hours since we got out. We've gotten 3 6 fusion beads and 1 7 fusion demon pearl. If we convert them into beads, that's 832. In other words, we still need 196 beads. After they came out of the first trial, they were informed by the organizers that they did not pass the trial. Because the condition to pass the first trial was to hand over a 10 fusion demon pearl or 1024 demon pearls that had not been fused before. And the rules of the organizers made it so that none of the participants or participating teams could pass the first trial. If this continued, almost all the participants and teams would be eliminated. And it was said that only one team could pass the first trial directly. If there was only one team left, there would be no need to carry out the later projects. They could directly announce the result of the Holy Glory battle. This situation had never happened before. So, to make up for it and to continue the event, the organizers could only slightly change the ending time. The participants and teams came out of the wasteland market at 12 noon. They still had 12 hours. No matter what method was used, whether it was robbing or stealing, in short, they had to gather 1024 demon pearls or a 10 fusion demon pearl. That was why they were in this situation now. Now all the participants and teams had gone crazy. They were desperately robbing the demon pearls of other participants and teams. Chapter 2191. Ordinary people didn't notice the difference in this city. But the influence of the spiritual world was huge. Most participants and teams were here for the title of Holy Glory. If their actions harmed ordinary people or caused a huge impact in the world of ordinary people, they would be eliminated. They might even face even more severe punishments. Thus, no one dared to be stupid now. They were more restrained in front of ordinary people. But for their own kind, they weren't so patient. Plus, most spiritualists were proud. Plus, time was really tight this time. There were only 12 hours in total. Everyone and every team had to do their best. They tried their best to steal from other teams. Some teams would turn around and steal from other teams as soon as they were robbed. Chen Zhao and Baifla were lying on the beach now. It was already early evening, but the two didn't mind. Baifla, shouldn't you find someone else to team up with? Is it fun to follow me all day? Or can't you find someone else to team up with? You should feel honored. Can I say dirty words? I just feel that we have more common topics to talk about. Common topics. Do you have some misunderstanding about yourself? I hope that you can inspire me with your great power, and I have a rich reserve of magic knowledge that can also inspire you. This was why Baifla had been working with Chen Zhao. It wasn't because they shared the same interests, nor was it because they had similar statuses. It was just that Baifla hoped to learn something from Chen Zhao. As for Chen Zhao's feelings, that wasn't in his consideration. Why don't you go pester Zhang Tianyi? Why don't you pester Mary 23? What's the point of pestering me? My advantage isn't obvious before them, Baifla said. Baifla said, based on my observation of you, your magic knowledge is rather poor and monotonous. This is called simple but refined. You don't understand. When you understand this, maybe you'll reach my current level. It was rare for Chen Zhao to act cool. He opened his mouth and acted like he was unfathomable. Unfortunately, Baifla didn't buy it at all. You can't tell me what to do. Your level is high, but your level is low. Baifla mercilessly exposed Chen Zhao's true nature. He was so angry that he wanted to flip the table. If you had this level of comprehension, you wouldn't have been stuck at a bottleneck for so many years. You should just give up. Your talent is too poor. What I lack is luck. Take you for example. Your talent isn't that great, but you're able to grasp such great power. This means that sometimes talent isn't more important than luck. Whether it's talent or luck, I achieved it, but you didn't. This means that I'm better than you. Both of them were trying their best to ridicule and belittle each other. Say whatever you want. It was as if he could find joy in doing so. However, the two of them refused to fall out. Those who didn't know would think that the two of them were good friends. Moreover, this quarrel lasted from evening to early morning. The whole beach was deserted, and they were still arguing. Of course, no one came to chase them away. In fact, there were quite a few people around them. However, they were all Bifla's subordinates. They were all in charge of taking care of Bifla's affairs. At this moment, one of Bifla's subordinates jogged over to Bifla, knelt on one knee, and performed a special greeting. Leader, the results of the first trial are out. Yes. How are my students' results? The young masters have all successfully entered the second round. They're currently ranked third. Third? Who's first and second? Bifla asked. In first place is the Sacred Army led by Mr. Matthew, with a score of 1,820 points. In second place is an unknown team from Huaxia. The team's name has not been disclosed, and they are only 5 points behind the first place. How many points did we get? 1785 points. How many people entered the second round? Bifla asked. 25 teams and 18 lone wolves. Including the casualties of the teams that advanced, there are 248 people in total. Chen Zhao turned his head and asked, "Do you have a list?" "Yes, Mr. Chen." "Please wait a moment." Because Chen Zhao and Bifla were of the same generation, Bifla's subordinates were especially respectful to him. A while later, Bifla's subordinate handed Chen Zhao a list. Chen Zhao found West and the others on the list. They were at the bottom, but everyone was here. No one had been injured in the first round and had to leave. The supernatural organization was ranked 21st. They weren't at the bottom, but their results weren't outstanding. They scored 1,150 points. This was a rather dangerous result. They'd passed the first trial with 1,024 points. Of course, Chen Zhao didn't really care about their results. He'd brought them here with the attitude of learning. Chen Zhao wouldn't be so arrogant as to think that everyone from his family was invincible. After staying in the barren land for so long, Chen Zhao had seen many strong people. The strength of some teams was indeed very strong. Of course, his 10 people wouldn't be so far behind in terms of combat power. At least, Chen Zhao believed that they could be in the top 5. The first trial wasn't just about team combat power. Luck was also a big factor. There was also psychological factors. Bifla glanced at the list in Chen Zhao's hands and couldn't help but laugh. 21st, looks like your team has to go home in the second round. Do you believe that I'll send your students home right now? Bifla pursed his lips and didn't provoke Chen Zhao anymore. He really couldn't guarantee that Chen Zhao wouldn't do such a despicable thing. The first round's result doesn't mean anything. If you really think that my team isn't that strong, do you dare to have a private round? Chen Zhao was just that arrogant. He'd already seen Bifla's students in the barren land. In terms of combat power, they weren't much stronger than his team. This was why Chen Zhao dared to challenge Bifla. Bifla didn't accept. Our teams don't need to compete. Let's save our energy for the second trial. Also, I think we should work together. At least, we won't suffer any losses in internal conflicts. Chen Zhao thought about it. That seemed to make sense. There was no point in them having fun here. Resting was the most important thing right now. As for the alliance that Bifla suggested, he'd see how it went. Chapter 2192. Oh, there's another piece of news that you should pay attention to, Bifla suddenly said seriously. What news? The people in charge of some teams, the invited guests this time, are up to no good. They've already done something sneakily today. In other words, people like you and me. Sort of, but they don't have my status or your power. What are they doing? Helping their teams get rid of competitors. That's not allowed, right? Of course not, but as long as they don't get caught, the organizers can't do anything to them. You better remind your team. Does that mean I can do the same thing? Bifla was angered by Qin Zhao's words. I'm telling you to remind your team to be careful, not for you to do the same thing. Forget it. Qin Zhao was just saying it casually. He didn't bring his team here to get a good ranking. Instead, he wanted to find out his team's current level. If it was only compared to the North American spiritual world. The supernatural organization was undoubtedly at the top. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they were the ruling class. In the North American spiritual world, the supernatural organization wasn't very famous. But their hidden power and power were very great. However, the North American spiritual world was the weakest in the world. Their influence was like the national football team in the entire soccer world. The supernatural organization wasn't on the same level as the entire North American spiritual world. Therefore, the supernatural organization couldn't clearly determine their level. Only by going to a bigger stage and interacting with the spiritual worlds of more regions could they truly understand their own level. Only in this way could he truly raise his level. The supernatural organization was far from the top of the spiritual world in the entire world. Perhaps the 21st place in the first round of the Battle of Holy Glory wasn't the supernatural organization's true ranking. But the ranking was also very telling. My people found another criminal organization. Do you want to join? Bifla asked. We didn't win last time, so let's see who's better this time. What do you think? Sure. After the first time, there wouldn't be any sense of guilt for the second time. Why don't we go in another direction and not use magic? We are competing as assassins. If we only use magic, it will be over in an instant. There is no way to determine a winner in such a competition, Bifla said. Assassin? I've never been an assassin. First of all, we can't let those criminals discover us. All the prey must be killed in close combat. We can't kill more than 3 criminals at once. If there are 4 criminals gathered together, we can't make a move. To Qin Zhao and Bifla, this wasn't a massacre. It was a game. To be honest, Qin Zhao also felt that if they did what they did the first time, hundreds of criminal organizations wouldn't be enough for them to kill at all. Unless they were given an army, this kind of competition would be meaningless. However, Bifla's suggestion and rules added some fun to the game. This was a local criminal group, and this criminal group had its own building. The building was called the South Branch Building, but the locals called it the Sin Building. Qin Zhao and Bifla arrived at the bottom of Sin Tower. The two of them checked the time. Let's begin when you're ready. Then let's begin. However, Bifla didn't start with a massacre. Instead, he sealed off the building's entrance. Then he made a signal jamming device to prevent the criminals from calling for help. The massacre officially began. Even with the various rules and restrictions Bifla had listed. This massacre didn't cause too much trouble for the two of them. It wasn't as convenient and fast as killing them all with a spell. However, a massacre that was similar to a normal person's wasn't something the criminals could stop. Bifla, how many have you killed? You already know the answer. Through the communicator, Bifla's reply was rather cold. Bifla replied like this because he could feel that Qin Zhao was using the small world to monitor him. Of course, Bifla wasn't too honest either. He was also using a spell to monitor Chen Zhao. Ha! 2 more spiritualists. Are they here for the same reason as us? Chen Zhao suddenly realized that 2 spiritualists had come to the building. Moreover, the 2 spiritualists seemed to be moving toward Chen Zhao and Bifla. They're here for us? Chen Zhao asked. I think so. Do you know them? Bifla asked. He also didn't know where the 2 spiritualists came from. Moreover, they seemed to know where Chen Zhao and Bifla were. Chen Zhao and Bifla met up. The 2 spiritualists also changed their route and headed toward where Chen Zhao and Bifla were gathered. The 2 spiritualists didn't hide their tracks. They directly appeared before Chen Zhao and Bifla. One was a tall, skinny man in a black robe. The other had a smile on his face and stood slightly behind the tall, skinny man. The 2 looked at Chen Zhao and Bifla, who were covered in blood. Chen Zhao and Bifla also stared at the 2. Are you here to take revenge for these people? Bifla's drooping arms were dripping with blood. Of course, the blood wasn't his. It was inevitable that there would be blood in a close fight. No, the tall, skinny man said calmly. Are you professional killers? Or just bloodthirsty? Chen Zhao and Bifla exchanged glances. They didn't understand the tall, skinny man's intentions. What did he mean? Didn't they realize that Bifla and Chen Zhao were spiritualists? Just tell me why you're here. Do you want more killing? I can give you more kills and prey. Of course, if you need money, that's not a problem either. Chen Zhao and Bifla exchanged glances again. It was because of their game that the 2 people in front of them had misunderstood. Did they think they were ordinary killers? Then, they wanted to pull them into their group and become their thugs. The 2 exchanged glances. This seemed to be an interesting new game. Both could see the interest in each other's eyes. Now was the time to test their acting skills. What makes you think you can give us more killing? To me, you're just 2 transvestite perverts. Ha! Maybe you should reintroduce yourself to me, Dark Warlock Ruik Des. Instantly, a terrifying black aura exploded from Ruik Des's body. In a few seconds, the black aura filled the entire crime building. All the criminals were instantly killed by the black aura, bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 2193. Death Aura. Chen Zhao's eyes widened. What a massive death aura. For example, Helis had obtained a ball of death aura and it was still one of her main attacks. The guy before him, Ruik Des, had more than 100 times more death aura than Helis. Do you feel the shock from my power? Ruik Des shouted condescendingly, this is a real massacre. Your massacre is too inefficient and too low-end. Who are you? Chen Zhao pretended to be shocked. Your expression is too exaggerated, Bifla's voice rang in Chen Zhao's ears. But he didn't let Ruik Des hear him. Me? I have many names. Grim Reaper, Demon, Undead Gonling. Undead Gonling. You're Undead Gonling. Bifla suddenly looked up at Ruik Des. He'd clearly heard of this name, or rather, a title. Chen Zhao was very confused. When Ruik Des saw that Bifla had heard of this name, he became even more proud. Yes, I'm Undead Gonling. Chen Zhao tilted his head and looked at the 2. What was so special about this name? Undead Gonling appeared in the 50s of the last century. He first appeared in Western Europe. Some people were digging graves and stealing corpses. What really made this name famous was a gravekeeper. The gravekeeper discovered a figure digging a grave. Just as he was about to stop it, he discovered that the figure's face was rotting. This was a huge commotion at the time. Did you do it? I remember this. It was just a small prank, but I didn't expect that this small prank would make me famous. You look younger than I imagined. According to age, you should be in your 80s or 90s now. I have eternal life. If you're willing to work for me, I don't mind giving you the same eternity. Chen Zhao and Bai Fle exchanged glances again. This guy was too arrogant. Eternity. The two of them were already at the top of the spiritual world, right? There was also Mary, Zhang Tianyi, and John Sr. Even the five of them combined couldn't achieve eternity. This guy actually dared to say that he would grant them eternity. It seems like you still have some doubts about me. It's okay, I can give you some benefits first. As he spoke, Ruik Des pointed at Bai Fle and a green light shot towards Bai Fle. Bai Fle stood in place and allowed the green light to shine on his body. Then, Bai Fle's breathing became heavy. What do you think? Can you feel it? I have just bestowed upon you an even greater power than before. If there are no accidents, you should be more than twice as strong as before. Chen Zhao looked at Bai Fle curiously. Bai Fle took a deep breath and punched the wall. His fist was embedded into the wall, and it looked like it was full of strength. Ruik Des was obviously very satisfied with his results. He was also satisfied with Bai Fle's astonished expression. What do you think? Are you satisfied with your strength? Give it to me. I want it too. I want to be as strong as him. Chen Zhao shouted impatiently. Restrain yourself. You have to have some hesitation in your anticipation and some uneasiness in your excitement. Bai Fle's voice rang out again. Then are you willing to submit to me? Of course. We'll do whatever you want us to. Chen Zhao stared at Ruik Des, his eyes shining. Then kneel down and show your allegiance to me. No. Chen Zhao suddenly rejected him. What era are we in? You still like to be worshipped by others. Don't tell me you want to be a god or something. That's too low. Don't tell me you really have such a lowly idea. Fine, forget it if you don't want to kneel. Ruik Des waved his hand. He was very uncomfortable from Chen Zhao's stare. Do you really want to disguise yourself as a god? If so, we don't really mind, but don't do something like kneeling so easily. If Chen Zhao could see Ruik Des's expression now, he would definitely see that his face was red. Oh, who's the person beside you? Then, Chen Zhao looked at the smiling man beside Ruik Des. From the moment they appeared until now, the man had been grinning. He had no other expression. He's my servant and slave. He completely submits to me and is under my control. You're not thinking of turning us into him, are you? Chen Zhao said in disdain. It's really creepy. Even if you want to become like him, it's impossible. You're more useful than him. Really? What abilities does he have? In what way are we better than him? You can do many things for me, but the slave can't leave my side. Can't leave your side. Actually, he's your bodyguard, right? Okay, let's not talk about these trivial things. Let's leave this place first. Stay where you are and don't resist my power. Ruik Des's black aura enveloped Chen Zhao and Bai Fle. Then the two felt a force lifting them up. Suddenly, Chen Zhao and Bai Fle felt something lifting them up. However, this force was too insignificant for them. It wasn't enough to lift them up at all. In the end, they still had to use their own power to fly. If Ruik Des found that he couldn't drag the two of them, he might give himself away. Fortunately, Ruik Descartes thought that Chen Zhao and Bai Fle were just two regular professional assassins. So, the two hadn't been exposed yet. Should we compete to see who's exposed first and who's discovered by this guy first? Chen Zhao glanced at Bai Fle, who was also flying beside him. He nodded and didn't say anything. He didn't know what kind of spell Bifla had used to send messages. Anyway, he had nothing else to do now. For now, he'd play with Ruik Des. From the previous contact, Chen Zhao could tell that Ruik Des was an arrogant spiritualist. He also liked to show off his magic. He seemed to like to find a sense of superiority from ordinary people. Of course, it couldn't be denied that he did have some abilities. Although he wasn't at the top, he was at least at a high level. Chen Zhao estimated Ruik Des' abilities. They should be about the same as Halley's, or maybe even stronger. But his strength should be limited. Mobile version of the fastest.d website. Chapter 2194. If power, identity, status, reputation, and other factors were combined into a ranking, for example, Zhang Tianyi, 23rd Blood Mary, and John Sr. were all top figures in the spiritual world. Their power, identity, and status were all at the top. There was no room for improvement. At least, the possibility of improvement was very small. Chen Zhao and Bifla were close to the top. For example, Bifla's power was slightly lacking, but his identity and status were also not to be underestimated. Chen Zhao's identity, status, and reputation were slightly lacking. Nevertheless, they were already top in a certain aspect. At least one of them could be mentioned in the same breath as the top few. Below them were the publicly recognized experts. Some people classified them as top experts. They had a certain identity, status, reputation, and outstanding power. Of course, power was the most important. As long as one had power, it was not difficult to become famous in the spiritual world. Ruik Des' strength wasn't top-notch, but he was close. He did not notice Chen Zhao and Bifla at all. On one hand, he was prejudiced. On the other hand, he was overconfident. On the other hand, Chen Zhao and Bifla liked this game. It was because of their cooperation that Ruik Des really thought that he controlled everything. The two were brought to a deserted cemetery. Chen Zhao and Bifla were both spiritualists. But they did not like this place. No one would like a place like this. Chen Zhao had once asked Helith if she liked dark and damp places. In the end, Helith only rolled her eyes in reply. A gloomy environment would give people a feeling of insecurity. This was the fear of nature that humans had retained during their evolution. On the other hand, a damp environment would purely affect people's physiological reactions. Ruik Des opened an underground entrance. Go in. Ruik Des pointed at the entrance. There won't be any man-eating monsters inside. You brought us here to be food for some monster, right? Do you have persecutory delusions? Ruik Des said angrily. In the end, Chen Zhao and Bifla were also driven in. The underground base did not look old. It seemed to have been built recently. Soon, they got their answer. After walking along the corridor for a while, they saw a few rotting corpses working there. To be precise, these corpses were completing the renovation workers' work. The construction of this underground base was not yet complete. Judging from the decoration style, Ruik Saunders' preferences were more modern. At least it was completely different from the gloomy graveyard outside. At first, Chen Zhao and Bifla had thought that the base under the eerie graveyard would only be scarier. However, the environment here made them both heave a sigh of relief. If it was really a dirty base, the two of them might not be able to last long. At this moment, a group of people walked over from the front. Everyone was wearing tight-fitting clothes of the same style. It was the same for both men and women. As for skin color, there were yellow, white, and black people. Mr. Sanders. Everyone was in awe of Ruik Des. At the same time, he looked at Chen Zhao and Bifla, who were behind Ruik Des. Are they new here? Yes, they're new here. You guys have to get along well. Also, get someone to show them around. You two, please follow me. A tall woman stood up. She seemed to be the big sister of the group. She had the temperament of a leader. Her outstanding looks and strength, coupled with her personal aura, made it hard for others to object when she spoke. Chen Zhao and Baifla followed the woman obediently. Let me introduce myself. I'm Mado Xinji. I'm Chen Zhao from China. Baifla from Central Asia. What do you do? Mado Xinji asked. Assassins. Assassins. Is that so? Seems like Mr. Sanders is no longer satisfied with ordinary people. Mado Xinji's voice was not loud, but it still reached Chen Zhao and Baifla's ears. Both of them sensed something unusual in Mado Xinji's tone. Was it a sense of urgency? She seemed to be afraid of being eliminated. The cafeteria is up ahead. Mado Xinji pointed to the front and said, the meal times here are fixed. Breakfast is from 6 to 8, lunch is from 12 to 1, and dinner is from 6 to 7. After the meal time, you won't be able to eat anything and can only go hungry. I feel like this place is militarized. Oh, do we have to wear these ugly uniforms like you? That's right. Mado Xinji nodded. You don't have to like it, but Mr. Sanders won't change his mind because of you. What did you do before? Chen Zhao asked curiously. I was a clerk, but that was a year ago, until I met Mr. Sanders, Mado Xinji said. I'm curious. A clerk following a dark warlock. Did he drug you with some kind of drug? Or some magic? No, I just paid him back. He helped me do something that I couldn't do. In exchange, I'll serve him for 10 years. I don't think there's anything wrong with our deal. Although Mado Xinji seemed to have her own opinions, her words seemed to be a little protective of Ruik Des. He's just using you. I know, but there's nothing wrong with that. We both take what we need. Chen Zhao shrugged. It seemed that provoking Mado Xinji didn't work. What do we need to do here? Accept experiments and modifications, like in the movies. Something like that. Will you mutate and go crazy in the end? That's right. If you fail, you will indeed mutate and go crazy. That's scary. I'm starting to regret it. Chen Zhao turned to Baifla. Even if you regret it, it's too late. From the moment you came here, there's no way out. After all, including me, no one will let you leave here alive and spread the secrets of this place. We're killers. Our lips are sealed. We only trust the dead. Mr. Sanders too. Okay, I'll be good, right, Baifla? Yes. Good. After all, I don't want to kill. You've never killed before. Chapter 2195. Does it mean that as long as I accept the modification and don't go crazy, it's considered a success? That's not the first time. Don't naively think that one successful modification is the end. That's just the beginning. Mado Xinji's tone carried a hint of warning, but also a hint of pride. Every modification is a test of life and death. Every modification will make you hover between rationality and madness. Every modification will make you understand the meaning of life anew. Looks exciting, Baifla said, rubbing his chin. How many times have you modified? Chen looked at Mado Xinji curiously. 5 times. All succeeded. I didn't turn into a monster or lose my rationality. Then when will our modification begin? Tomorrow, you'll receive your first modification. Alright, looks like I should look forward to tomorrow. That's the furnace in front, the place for the modification experiment. Mado Xinji pointed at a metal door in front. Can't we go in? Yes. Mato Shinji led the way. After opening the door, Chen and Bifla felt a wave of heat as they left. They actually used underground magma to form a magma pool about 20 meters in diameter in this room. In the center of the pool was a container soaked in magma. The container was transparent glass, with a small part exposed outside the magma pool. There was a person soaking in the container. A few people were waiting at the edge of the magma pool. Is that a modification experiment? Chen asked. Yes. I thought it was cooking. Mato Shinji glanced at Chen. Are you really an assassin? Is there a problem? I've never seen an assassin who likes to bicker so much. Have you seen many assassins? No, it's my first time seeing a legendary assassin. I think he looks more like one. It's always like that in movies. Talking less doesn't mean you're an assassin. Talking more doesn't mean you're not an assassin. Just then, the person soaking in the container suddenly opened his eyes and began to struggle violently. He tried to smash open the container, but the glass container seemed to be unimaginably tough. The liquid in the container also absorbed his beating. Outside, Chen and the others couldn't even hear the sound of the people inside the container hammering. He seems to be in pain. Are you not letting him out? This process is normal. Humans are unable to withstand the power extracted from the magma, so special potions are needed to suppress it. Even so, it will still cause a huge impact on the human body and mentality. If one can persist, then it will be considered a success. What if I don't make it? Falling into madness will also turn you into a monster. You're talking about injecting the energy extracted from the magma into a person's body. Let's not talk about whether it's possible. Even if it's possible, can it turn a person into a monster? What turns people into monsters isn't the power extracted from the magma, but the special potions used to suppress it. Madhwa paused, then added, if this special potion is not used, the person will definitely die, but if it is used, there is a possibility of success. What are the chances of success? Not necessarily. Everyone's physique is different. Their endurance and willpower are also different, so the probability is different. Give me an average. Between 40% to 60%. At that moment, the container opened. The person soaked in it immediately rushed out of the container, knelt on the ground and vomited. The surrounding staff hurried forward, wanting to help the person up. But Madhwa, who was standing at the edge, immediately shouted, "Everyone, step back." When the surrounding staff heard Madhwa's words, most of them were stunned for a moment, but they still obeyed Madhwa's order and retreated to the side. Madhwa clearly noticed the abnormality of the person undergoing the transformation experiment. He was roaring like a wild beast. Suddenly, he raised his head. Chen and Bifla noticed that his face had become slightly distorted. The person glared fiercely at Madhwa, Chen and Bifla in front of him. Chen and Bifla seemed to have discussed it before, and both took a step back. He looks a little scary, Miss Madhwa. I'll leave him to you. Madhwa Shinji did not have any objections and took a step forward. Ningku, calm down, you still have a chance. Don't give up on yourself. What responded to Madhwa Shinji was a hysterical roar from Ningku. Fur began to grow on Ningku's body. At the same time, he pounced towards Madhwa. Madhwa immediately went up to meet him. First, she avoided Ningku's attack, and at the same time, she hit him hard in the abdomen. Ningku rolled a few times on the ground and stood up unscathed. Chen and Bifla stood outside the battle circle to watch the show. And they were making sarcastic remarks while commenting. Her fighting skills are so amateur. Apart from her outstanding physical strength, her performance looks very bad. Their voices were neither loud nor soft, but it was enough for Madhwa to hear. Madhwa was so angry that she was about to vomit blood. If Ningku hadn't given her great pressure, she would probably have turned around and punched them a few times. But Chin and Bifla obviously did not suppress their cold-blooded nature. He was still talking incessantly. The more Madhwa listened, the angrier she became. Ningku, who had fallen into madness, was already hopeless. And Madhwa could not get rid of Ningku in a short time. Of course, there was another very important reason. Madhwa Shinji showed some mercy. After all, they were once companions. And the degree of Ningku's mutation was not very big. Madhwa still had some hope that Ningku could regain his sanity. However, the two sides fought for a while, but still, no one could do anything to the other. After fighting for 10 minutes, Madhwa repelled Ningku with one blow. She also took a few steps back to regroup. Madhwa looked at Chin and Bifla. Since you think I didn't perform well, then let me see what you can do. Madhwa suddenly took 2 steps back. At the same time, she reached out and pushed Chin and Bifla's back. The two stumbled in front of Ningku. At this time, Ningku also attacked the two. Bifla suddenly reached out and slashed forward. Ningku's neck was instantly cut open, and blood splattered all over Bifla. Under Madhwa's stunned gaze, Ningku's lifeless body slowly fell to the ground. Madhwa looked at Bifla in a daze. How did you do it? Chapter 2196. See, this is the difference between a killer and a regular person. Grinning, Chen Zhao put his hand on Mato Shinji's shoulder. Mato Shinji's expression darkened. She flung Chen Zhao's arm away. But Bifla had easily killed Nink, who'd gone mad. It still made Madhwa Shinji feel a little uncomfortable. She wasn't sad about Nink's death. To Nink, death was a form of release. She just felt that even after 5 modifications, she still couldn't compare to a newbie. Was there really such a huge difference between a professional killer and a regular person like her? Madhwa Axing knew her own strength and ability. After the modifications, she already had abilities far beyond a regular person. But Bifla had crushed her in a strange way. Madhwa Shinji turned and left. Chen Zhao and Bifla still followed her. Madhwa Shinji felt a sense of danger. This was her only home. Even if Ruik Des was using her, she didn't feel anything. At least here, someone needed her. She could also show her value. But the appearance of these two killers made her feel like she was about to be eliminated. She felt like she was about to be eliminated. Without a doubt, there was a fundamental difference between a regular person and a killer. For example, if it was the Mato Shinji from a year ago, she definitely wouldn't be able to fight against the crazy Nink. But Bifla had ended the battle in the blink of an eye. If the two could be like her and go through 3, 4 times, no, maybe they only needed 1 successful modification experiment. They would surpass her in all aspects. Would she still have any value then? Are all assassins like you? No, we're the best killers, Bifla said proudly. Then what's the difference between us and regular killers? Mato Shinji asked. Just like the difference between you and regular people, Bifla said. Of course, Mato Shinji knew how big the difference was between her and regular people. Mato Shinji brought Chen Zhao and Bifla around the underground palace a few times. Finally, she brought them to their residence. This was a residential area, even though it was underground. Although it was underground, there were some modern facilities that wouldn't make people uncomfortable. Chen Zhao and Bifla were placed in the same room. Chen Zhao drew a line in the room. Don't cross this line, especially when I'm asleep, or I'll kill you. 10 centimeters more on your side, Bifla said coldly. At the same time, he redivided the room. I think you're the one who's been drinking too much. Chen Zhao added another line. It's about time. It's not almost the same. You have more, and I have less. Chen Zhao didn't like staying in the same room with men. Bifla didn't like it either. Both of them were the type of people who were particularly strong. They would not give in to the other party. You want to fight? Do you think I'll be afraid of you? At this moment, the door was pushed open. Mado Shinji looked at the messy room. What are you doing? I want to change rooms, Bifla said straightforwardly. I also want to change rooms. I'll leave this room to him. We didn't change rooms. You'd better behave yourselves. Don't cause trouble here, Ma Duo Axang said coldly, then turned around and left the room. Chen Zhao glanced at Bifla and also left the room. He pushed open the opposite door. When the two people inside saw Chen Zhao come in, they were both stunned. Hi, I'm new here. My room is opposite. Can I change rooms with you? Get out, kid. Hearing that Chen Zhao was new, the two acted like seniors, not giving him any face at all. 3 minutes later, the two dragged their luggage out with swollen noses and noses. As soon as they reached the door, the other two also dragged their luggage out. What happened? Don't mention it. A** Shoal came and wants to change rooms with us. Us too, bang, bang, are you asleep? Idiot, don't knock on the wall so hard. I don't want to change rooms. What's Ruik Desa's goal? I don't know. Is it related to the Battle of Holy Glory? This underground base clearly took some time to build. It wasn't specially prepared for the Battle of Holy Glory. Also, his other nickname is Immortal Gonling. He's famous in Eastern Europe, but he doesn't have any criminal records, so no one wants him. Fine. Chen Zhao shrugged. What do you plan to do with this guy? If he's not that annoying, he'll leave after the game ends. If he makes me annoyed, I'll kill him after the game ends. What's your standard of annoyance? You're the standard, Bifla said. Chen Zhao wanted to punch through the wall and pull Bifla over. But after thinking carefully, he gave up on the idea. After all, changing rooms was too troublesome. He'd already done it once. If he did it again, it might arouse Ruik Desa's suspicions. Oh, when's the next Battle of Holy Glory? 3 days later. That means we only have 3 days. Maybe not 3 days. Why? Maybe you'll be exposed tomorrow. Even if you're exposed, I won't. As long as I don't use my real power, Ruik Des won't notice. Chen Zhao and Bifla chatted for the whole night. Both of them were the kind of people who were extremely poor and bored. Plus, they were full of energy. They couldn't stay idle for a few days. The next day, Chen Zhao and Bifla were woken up. After breakfast, the two of them were called to Ruik Des. Mado Shinji was in the room too. I heard you guys killed the crazy Ning with one move yesterday. Not us, Bifla said matter-of-factly. Ruik Des looked at Chen Zhao. What about you? How strong are you compared to him? Not weaker than him, Chen Zhao said, glancing at Bifla provocatively. Both of you are excellent candidates. Ruik Des had wanted to say excellent test subjects, but he didn't say anything. However, considering the two's state of mind, he changed his words. With your abilities, the first modification experiment should be fine. Then let's begin. I can't wait to become stronger. Very good, but before that, you better stay calm. The calmer, the better. Our training has made us good at controlling our emotions. That's great. Let's begin. Who's first? Him. Him, Chen Zhao and Bifla said at the same time. Chapter 2197. Loic Des wasn't asking for their opinion. He pointed at Chen Zhao and said, "You, first." Chen Zhao was helpless. He could only drag his clothes and walk toward the container. He stepped into the container and the liquid immediately wrapped around him. From a medical analysis, the potion had strong skin irritation. Chen Zhao felt it and analyzed the components of the potion at the same time. If it was a simple mutation potion, Chen Zhao knew how to make it. It wasn't any special or complicated potion. However, the components of the potion in this container were more complicated. For a layman, it was almost impossible to analyze the components. Mado Shinji stood at the side and looked at Chen Zhao, who was soaking in the container, with a complicated expression. Loic Des crossed his arms in front of his chest. His expression couldn't be seen. Bifla found a seat at the side and sat down. Mado Shinji glanced at Bifla. Bifla was even more relaxed than Loic Des. It was as if he was a complete stranger soaking in the container. "Aren't you worried at all?" "Worried about what?" Bifla said, unconcerned. "Even though the first experiment isn't very risky, it's still dangerous. Aren't you worried that something will happen to him?" "If something happens to him, I'll be happy to see it. Isn't he your friend? When did you have this misunderstanding?" "We're not friends." Mado Shinji couldn't help but be confused. What was Chen Zhao's relationship with Bifla? 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. At first, Mado Shinji looked at the time every 10 minutes. Later on, she looked at the time every minute. The longer Chen Zhao soaked in the container, the more impatient she became. 30 minutes. This was the record she'd once set. The potion in the container had a terrifying corrosive effect. Both the body and the mind were corroded. The longer one persisted, the more medicinal potency one absorbed, the stronger the individual's strength would be, and the stronger the corrosion would be. Usually, 10 minutes was a normal person's limit. After this time, unpredictable changes might happen. After 20 minutes, there would be an extremely strong adverse reaction. If one didn't come out within 30 minutes, their body might mutate and their mind might become twisted. But Chen Zhao had already soaked in the container for 40 minutes and there was no reaction at all. Just like the last time when Ning Ku was soaked in the container for more than 20 minutes, he had an extremely strong reaction and even lost control. Right now, Chen Zhao seemed to be asleep. "Chen Zhao, that's enough." Bifla's voice rang in his ears. Chen Zhao suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the people outside the container. Then, Chen Zhao gestured at the container, gesturing for everyone to open the lid. After the container was opened, Chen Zhao jumped out. Loic Des and Mado Sinj looked at the wet display. Neither of them avoided the completely naked Chen Zhao. Of course, Chen Zhao didn't really care. "How do you feel?" Ruick Des looked like he was admiring his own work. In fact, he did treat Chen Zhao as his own work. Chen Zhao looked at his body and then shook his head. "I don't know. I don't feel anything special." Ruick Des rubbed his chin and fell into deep thought. Was the physique of a professional assassin really that much stronger than that of an ordinary person? After staying in the container for 40 minutes, Chen Zhao had almost absorbed all the potion's power. But his body didn't have any negative reactions. Ruick thought for a while, then raised his palm, and a black light burst forth from his palm. The black light dissipated before it could reach Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao reacted quickly. He did a backflip and rolled several meters away. He'd almost been exposed. Chen Zhao clutched his chest, his expression somewhat pained. "What are you doing?" Chen Zhao pretended to be angry at Ruick Des. "You're not bad. I'm looking forward to the second one now." Ruick Des turned to Bifla. "Don't lose to your partner." I won't lose to him. Bifla glanced at Qin Zhao, his eyes filled with provocation. Just like Qin Zhao, Bifla stayed in the container. He didn't come out until all the potion's power was absorbed. Mado Singe realized that Qin Zhao was dozing off on the ground, just like Bifla. He didn't care if Bifla was in danger in the container. Just like Qin Zhao, Bifla walked out of the container unscathed. I stayed 1 minute longer than him. The first thing Bifla said was that he defeated Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao rolled his eyes. After most of the potion's power is absorbed, it's basically like diving. You might as well dive for 10 more minutes. That's still a win. Fine, you win, okay. Qin Zhao didn't argue. There was nothing to argue with anyway. Looks like you're both stable. Practice your transformations in the next 2 days. The day after tomorrow, I'll arrange your first mission for you. How? You two are about the same level. You can spar with each other. Remember, don't be too heavy-handed. After all, you're rare candidates. With that, Ruik Des turned and left. Only Qin Zhao, Bifla, and Mado Singe were left. Bifla looked at Qin Zhao. How about it? Do you want to compete with our current power? What Bifla was implying was that Qin Zhao shouldn't use his own strength and suppress it to the level he'd just displayed. I'll fight you to the end. Actually, there was no way to distinguish one's status in this battle. Even though they'd suppressed their strength, their levels were still there. Physique, willpower, and resistance couldn't be suppressed. Nevertheless, Mado Singe was still curious about how much Qin Zhao and Bifla had improved after the modification experiment. Before the modification, Qin Zhao and Bifla were already terrifyingly strong. After the first modification, their strength would probably increase by leaps and bounds too. Mado Singe brought Qin Zhao and Bifla to a wide indoor training field. Before Mado Singe could give the order, Qin Zhao and Bifla attacked each other at the same time. Their faces were hit at the same time and they took 2 steps back. Does it hurt? Bifla touched his cheek. What do you think? Qin Zhao and Bifla both had extremely rich combat experience. In particular, Qin Zhao's close-range combat was extremely proficient. In comparison, Bifla's close-range combat was slightly lacking. But with hundreds of years of experience, he could continuously improve himself in battle. Mobile version of the fastest.d website. Chapter 2198. Mado Shinji's eyes almost popped out. Qin Zhao and Bifla had only undergone the first modification experiment. However, the combat power they had displayed already made Mado Shinji feel very guilty. Mado Shinji clenched her fists and stared at the 2 people in the middle. Let's not talk about the physiques they displayed. At the very least, they were much more powerful than Mado Shinji. However, after 10 minutes, the 2 stopped at the same time. There was no point in continuing. It was like 2 boxing champions were scratching each other's itches. Would they be able to determine the victor with such a method? Mado Shinji frowned. She felt that the 2's tacit agreement from the start to the end made her feel strange. But she couldn't tell what was going on with this strange feeling. Don't you 2 need to familiarize yourself with your powers? Mado Shinji asked. We're already familiar with each other. We don't need to. Both of them were so conceited and proud. How about I spar with you too? Mado Shinji made up her mind to test how powerful the 2 were. Not interested. Bifla rejected Mado Shinji's challenge with a cold expression. Then, Mado looked at Qin Zhao. How about you tell us your story? If it's interesting enough, I'll spar with you. My past. It's not a secret. Many people here know about it. If you're nosy enough, you can get a more detailed story from others. It's more interesting to hear it from the person involved. At least, I hope it's interesting. Nothing much. I fell in love with a love scammer, and after that scammer married me, he bought a lot of accident insurance for me. The rest of the story wasn't too surprising. You should be able to guess that he planned an accident for me. When I was about to die, I met Mr. Sanders. Madhwa Shinji's eyes sparkled with admiration at the mention of Reich Dose. Mr. Des saved me and made a deal with me. He threatened you and made you obey him. Hearing Chen Zhao's words, Madhwa Shinji's face turned red in anger. Mr. Des isn't as despicable as you say. He's more noble than anyone else. Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. To him, she was just a brainless fan who had been fooled by the facade. You call experimenting on living people noble? Have you misunderstood the definition of nobility? He's never forced you, Madhwa Shinji argued. Maybe that swindler was arranged by him. Nonsense. Madhwa Shinji was furious. She raised her fist and swung it at Chen Zhao. Chuckling, Chen Zhao took a step back and dodged Madhwa Shinji's punch. Destroying the faith of others is a very immoral thing to do, Bifla said calmly. Madhwa Shinji turned to look at Bifla fiercely. You have the same idea as him. No, he's just teasing you. I know. Madhwa Shinji was still angry. Mr. Des is not as despicable as he said. Just based on Ruik Des's ability and the time cost, if he really needs you to work for him, he doesn't need to go through so much trouble. Humph. Madhwa Shinji snorted and turned to leave. Bifla was giving an explanation. However, this explanation did not satisfy her. To Madhwa Shinji, Ruik Des was a god in her heart. When she needed help the most, God did not help her. It was Ruik Des who had helped her. Therefore, she would not allow anyone to insult Ruik Des. She would not allow anyone to tarnish her faith. At that moment, Madhwa Shinji saw Ruik Des in the laboratory. He was making some complicated magic potions. Madhwa Shinji pushed open the lab door. Ruik Des did not raise his head. Instead, he continued with his work. Madhwa, I can feel that your mind is very active. What happened? Mr. Des, those two guys are much stronger than normal people, but they are not loyal to you. They have no respect for you at all. I don't need respect, Ruik Des said calmly. I don't need anyone's loyalty. I said that this is a deal, just like the deal with you. Even if you say that, you can't change my decision. Mr. Des, I will always be loyal to you. I don't need it. I said that this is a deal. Mr. Des, do you want them to carry out the mission tomorrow? Yes. Is there a problem? Please allow me to follow them. After all, they might betray me. You can't watch them. If they want to betray you, you won't be able to stop them. You might even lose your life. I'm not afraid. As long as I can do something for Mr. Des, I'm willing to do anything. Okay, you don't have to worry about them. Do your own thing. Mr. Des, I still want to watch them. Ruik Des finally stopped his work and looked up at Madhwa Shinji. After thinking for a while, Ruik Des finally said, All right, keep this bottle of potion on you. It can increase your strength tenfold, and it has already lasted for more than an hour. If you use this bottle of potion, it's best to return here within an hour. Otherwise, you'll definitely die. Mr. Des, I'll keep a close eye on them. Madhwa Shinji hesitated for a while before saying, Mr. Des, those two are slandering you. The Asian called Chen Zhao said that you were the one who arranged the scammer. I don't need to do that. You're not worth my effort, Ruik Des replied. Ruik Des replied, though his reply was even harsher than Bifla's earlier words. However, Madhwa Shinji felt satisfied. Mr. Des, what mission do you want them to carry out tomorrow? Stealing corpses, Ruik Des replied. You can give this mission to me or someone more loyal. Why do you want them to do it? Because the corpses they want to steal don't belong to ordinary people. The corpses are all guarded by spiritualists like me. You're not bad, but you can't carry out this mission yet. Comparatively, as killers, they're more suitable for this mission. They know how to hide and escape. Okay, you can leave now. Don't disturb my experiment. Ruik Des once again focused on his work. Mobile version of the fastest.d website. Chapter 2199. The next day, Chen Zhao and Bai Fle were both called to Reich Dos. Of course, Mato Shinji was there too. The reason I called the three of you here today is to ask you to do something for me. Reich Dos glanced at Mato Shinji, even though she was actually monitoring Chen Zhao and Bai Fle. Of course, he couldn't say that in front of them. Nominally, she was carrying out the mission with them. I need some corpses. You three need to help me get some corpses. They shouldn't be corpses lying in the morgue, right? Bai Fle asked. That's right. When these corpses were alive, they were special people just like me. Bai Fle didn't deny it. Their corpses won't be left in the morgue either. There will be special people guarding them. So you're sending us to our deaths. We've been strengthened, but that doesn't mean we can fight against people like you, Chen Zhao said, pretending to be angry. First of all, the ones who will guard the corpses won't be strong, and it's impossible for them to be at my level. Therefore, you guys don't have to worry. The average spiritualists might not be stronger than you guys. Actually, you guys are considered superhumans now. If you guys were in the supernatural world, you guys would be considered enhancers. Coupled with your rich combat experience, those spiritualists might not be able to do anything to you. That means we can kill people? Please don't. Reich Dos was shocked. Large numbers of spiritualists have come to Istanbul. The most outstanding spiritualists in the world are all here. Even the top spiritualists are here. If you kill any spiritualist now, there might be a storm of revenge. Reich Dos was ambitious, but that didn't mean he was stupid. He was also arrogant enough to think that he could defeat all the heroes. Not to mention the top existences, any one of them could press him to the ground and rub him. Even among the people qualified to participate in the Battle of Holy Glory, there were a few who could defeat him. The consequences of killing indiscriminately in Istanbul were very serious. Ordinary people didn't need to be mentioned. If a spiritualist killed an ordinary person, or even if there was direct evidence that it was done by a spiritualist, there would be extremely serious consequences. As for spiritualists, even the most ordinary spiritualist might have a god standing behind them. He couldn't afford to offend anyone. Ruik Des suppressed his strong uneasiness. He had seen the bloodthirsty side of Chen Zhao and Bai Fle. At that time, he also catered to their interests and tricked them into coming here. However, the two of them performed well in the modification experiment. It was still worth it for Ruik Saunders. But when Chen Zhao said those words, Ruik felt his eyelids twitch. There will be a chance in the future, but not this time. What I want you to do is to bring the bodies here, not to kill. Do you understand? Ruik Des regained his coldness. You can't kill people. Boring, Chen Zhao complained. Ruik Des narrowed his eyes. Are you going to refuse my order? Okay, calm down. Chen Zhao chuckled and waved his hand. I'll listen to your orders. That's for the best. Let's move quickly. Then Chen Zhao, Bai Fle, and Mato Shinji were sent out of the underground base. Very soon, Mato Shinji realized that Chen Zhao and Bai Fle weren't going to the mission location. The two of them found a restaurant on the side of the road and ordered a lot of food. Aren't we going to the mission now? What's the rush? Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. Look at the time. It's daytime. Are you going to charge into someone's house and steal the bodies? It's not a hospital, it's someone's house. Fine. Mado Shinji was very unhappy with Chen Zhao and Baifla's negative attitude. But thinking about it, it did seem to make sense. Going to someone's house to steal a body in the daytime. It really wasn't a good idea. After thinking for a while, Mado Shinji said, then follow me somewhere. Where? Don't worry about it. Just follow me. Ms. Mado, please be clear. We're not your subordinates. Mado Shinji stared coldly at Chen Zhao and Baifla. Are you sure you want to reject my request? Ms. Mado, you might not be able to defeat us. Although you've gone through 4 modification experiments, your foundation is much weaker than ours. Plus, there are 2 of us and you're only 1. Do you think Mr. Sanders didn't give me any trump cards? Do you think he doesn't know your personalities? Fine, I'll listen to you, Ms. Mado. Chen Zhao's change in attitude was out of Mado Shinji's expectations. She stared at Chen Zhao, who was smiling playfully. She could clearly feel that Chen Zhao wasn't afraid of her. Baifla was the same. Perhaps they didn't care about her trump cards at all. Subconsciously, they looked down on her. Chen Zhao seemed to be compromising, but in reality, he just didn't want to fall out with her so soon. The 3 arrived outside a private house. Chen Zhao, Baifla, and Mado Shinji stood opposite the community road. They stared at the house from afar. What kind of people live in there? Are they your enemies? Do you need me to go in and kill everyone inside? Mado Shinji glared at Chen Zhao. Shut up. Just then, a car stopped in front of the house. A man and a few children of different ages alighted from the car. There were 4 children in total. One was 11 or 12 years old, one was 8 or 9, one was 4 or 5, and the last one was in the man's arms. It was less than 2 years old. Mado Shinji couldn't help but get excited. She stared closely at the child beside the man. At that moment, another woman got out of the car. She was pregnant. Mado Shinji held onto the tree trunk, her palms tearing through the bark. Is that man the liar you mentioned? Chen Zhao asked curiously. Didn't you say he died? No, he's my ex-husband. Oh. So those children are your children? It's not a wise choice to bring 2 killers to visit someone you care about, Baifla said indifferently. Mado Shinji was stunned. She really hadn't thought about this. She'd brought Chen Zhao and Baifla here because she had a mission to monitor them. She couldn't let Chen Zhao and Baifla out of her sight. But she also wanted to see her own children. That was why she brought them along. She didn't expect that Baifla's words would instantly make her realize something. Chen Zhao and Baifla were dangerous. Chapter 2200. Mado Shinji glanced at Chen Zhao and Baifla. A hidden murderous intent flashed across her eyes. However, Mado Shinji's disguise was too crude. Who were Chen Zhao and Baifla? Mado Shinji's trick seemed like a joke before the 2 of them. She glanced at her child and ex-husband from afar. Mado Shinji left with Chen Zhao and Baifla. It was getting late. The 3 went to the designated mission location. According to the information they'd received from Ruik Des, this should be a private villa. From the outside, it indeed looked like a private villa. But when the 3 looked down from a high slope thousands of meters away, they could see that it was a heavily guarded fortress. There were at least 4 guards visible to the naked eye. There were also people going in and out of the villa. Also, they couldn't see their target from this high slope. Those people had probably placed the corpses inside the building. Chen Zhao glanced at Bifla. At this distance, even Chen Zhao couldn't sense the situation inside the villa. But Bifla's senses could definitely tell. Bifla was expressionless, though. Chen Zhao couldn't see anything from his face. Inside the villa, an old man in a gray robe sat on the sofa. He held a metal walking stick with his hands and his eyes were slightly closed. Just then, a young spiritualist came in from outside. "Mr. Rodman, I sense that someone's spying on this place." The old man called Rodman didn't open his eyes. He only replied, "Got it. You can leave." The young spiritualist left the hall respectfully. "Hey, homie." Another copper called the young spiritualist. "Come here." "What for?" Homie came to a corner. "That old man Rodman still hasn't reacted." "You're new. Of course you don't know." "Know what?" "Could it be that the old man is blind?" "Mr. Rodman cultivates blind. People who cultivate this can't open their eyes." "What happens if they open their eyes?" "Everyone around will lose their vision," Homie said. "What kind of spell is this? Or is it some kind of ability?" "This is a special characteristic of the blind magic." Although Mr. Rodman did not open his eyes, his mind's eye has always been observing his surroundings. His senses are sharper than anyone else's, so even without his eyes, he knows what is going on. Although the effect is quite good, it's only effective against ordinary people. Even if spiritualists lose their vision, they still have other senses and perception abilities. Naive. Losing your sight is just your first reaction. Although Mr. Rodman's strength isn't the best, he is known as the undefeatable blind. Do you know why? Why? Because no one can defeat him. Isn't that an exaggeration? There are so many spiritualists in the world, and there are even a few top-notch existences. How is it possible that no one can defeat him? It's because he can only open his eyes once. Once, he'll be invincible. As long as one falls into darkness, he can banish everyone who falls into darkness to the world of darkness. No one can be exempted, not even the strongest spiritualists. Homie said, this is the secret of his invincibility, the only chance in his life to be invincible. So powerful. Of course, so it's safest for Mr. Rodman to guard the corpses of these spiritualists. No one dares to offend him. There's no way to avoid falling into darkness. Not any known magic, be it Eastern or Western, Roland said. Since that old man is so powerful, why does he need us? How boring. Other than Rodman, the other guards here were the younger generation of various forces. This was because this was where the corpses of those who died in the Battle of Holy Glory were stored. And because the grudges between the various forces were complicated. Moreover, the corpses of spiritualists were also very valuable. If only someone from one force was guarding the corpses of the spiritualists, no one knew what kind of trouble would occur. In the past, a spiritualist guarding the corpses secretly refined the corpses. In the end, it led to a war between the forces. Therefore, in the Battle of Holy Glory, as long as the corpses of those who died in the battle were under unified management, the various forces would also send people to temporarily guard the corpses. Basically, if someone died in a force's team, that force would have to send someone to temporarily guard the corpses. Of course, Rodman was the person in charge here. Therefore, most of the time, this place was peaceful. Inside and outside, no one dared to peep here. After all, the risk of facing Rodman was far greater than obtaining the corpses of a few spiritualists. The benefits and risks were not proportional, so of course, the situation was peaceful. Of course, occasionally, some reckless thieves would come here to take advantage of them. Most of the time, Rodman didn't need to do anything. The entry-level disciples or members of the various forces were enough to send those thieves away. You have super perception. Do you know who is watching over us this time? I don't know. Even Mr. Rodman, who is in charge here, doesn't know and actually dared to peep here. It's most likely a group of brainless idiots. Idiots are good too. Those big shots are participating in the battle of holy glory, and we small people are guarding the corpses here. Finally, we have a chance to exercise our muscles. We can't beat those great experts, so we can use this group of idiots to practice our skills. The guards in the villa soon knew that a group of people had their eyes on this place. Most of the guards were already extremely bored. They heard that they could fight with others, and that they could do it openly. They were all very excited. The villa looked peaceful under the night sky, but the guards inside were all overflowing with fighting spirit. Ms. Motto, what's your plan? One of you is in charge of attracting the guards' attention, Motto Shinji said. One of you go in and find and steal the corpses. I'll be here to support you. You really know how to choose missions, Chen Zhao said mockingly. Isn't the mission too difficult for you? It's getting late. Hurry, Bifla urged. Okay, Ms. Motto. There's still some distance from here to the villa, but don't let your guard down. This isn't a safe zone. Those guys have all kinds of strange abilities. Who knows what special ones they might have? You don't have to be so nosy. Just mind your own mission. Mobile version of the fastest.d website. Chapter 2201. Chen Zhao glanced at Bifla. Are you going to restrain him or should I? Chen Zhao asked. Rock paper scissors, Bifla said emotionlessly. Chen Zhao and Bifla attacked at the same time. The winner was decided immediately. Chen Zhao lost. He could only accept the result helplessly. With that, Chen Zhao put on his black mask. He was also wearing a black shirt and pants. One could tell at a glance that he wasn't a good person. In the distance, Motto Shinji stared expressionlessly at Chen Zhao and Bifla outside the house. When she saw Chen Zhao's attire, she was still a bit dazed. Chen Zhao's attire was too eye-catching. Usually, a thief who broke into a house at night would wear this attire. Chen Zhao jumped onto the wall. Under the cover of the night, he secretly observed the situation inside the house. But before he could jump into the yard, the spiritualists appeared to welcome him. A bolt of lightning shot toward Chen Zhao's position. But Chen Zhao had already dodged it. He flipped lightly and performed a difficult maneuver in the air, landing steadily. Just then, the spiritualists who'd been lying in ambush appeared one by one. A dozen or so spiritualists stood in a circle, surrounding Chen Zhao. You better surrender. Otherwise, you'll be seriously injured. Hami held a weapon that looked like a magic staff. The bolt of lightning just now had come from this magic tool. The other spiritualists also held the same magic tool, but the tip of this magic tool shone with different elements. It was a simple yet intricate magic tool. Chen Zhao probed a bit and roughly understood the mechanism of the magic tool. No matter what element the spiritualist had, as long as they poured magic power into the tool, they could create magic attacks of the tool's own element. In the distance, Motto Shinji, who was using a telescope with night vision, frowned. She wasn't worried about Chen Zhao's life. She was worried about what would happen if Chen Zhao was caught. Would it implicate Ruik Des? At this moment, the situation changed again. With incredible speed, Chen Zhao flipped backward and flew into the bushes behind him. The spiritualists were stunned at first. Then they used the magic tools in their hands to shoot randomly into the grass. But when they flipped over the grass, they realized that Chen Zhao had already escaped. Ah, just then, a scream came from a corner not far away. The spiritualist hurriedly ran to the corner. He found a copper coin lying on the ground. My neck, help me, help me. Chen Zhao escaped from the bushes and ran into the spiritualist, blocking his way. Although he was a little heavy-handed, he didn't kill. However, the feeling of having his neck broken by Chen Zhao was definitely something he had never felt before. In fact, the neck was second only to the crotch in terms of pain receptors. This was also why the strange phenomenon of sleeping was reflected on his neck. Everyone could only see his back. With a flip, Chen Zhao charged into the villa through the window. Just as Chen Zhao was about to run, he saw a balding old man sitting in the hall. Even though the old man was sitting on the sofa, he was still leaning on his cane. Chen Zhao walked to the front and saw an old man with his eyes closed. The old man looked like he was asleep. But Chen Zhao knew that the old man wasn't asleep. Also, with his aura, he was probably a boss-level character. Hi, sorry to disturb you, Chen Zhao greeted the old man generously. Rodman tilted his head slightly, and the walking stick in his hand hit the ground heavily. Clang! Instantly, Chen Zhao felt a shock wave spread from the point of contact between the cane and the ground. Then, all the glass windows in the entire villa were shattered. The young spiritualist who chased Chen Zhao had just entered the villa from the various entrances. He was sent flying by the shock wave that came head-on. Chen Zhao only covered his face with his arm. His night suit was slightly damaged. As for himself, he was completely unharmed. What a fierce old man, Chen Zhao couldn't help but comment. Rodman's eyes were still closed, but when he heard Chen Zhao's voice, he couldn't help but frown. Not dead. From his voice, he didn't seem to be injured. Rodman gripped the end of his walking stick tightly. Instantly, Chen Zhao felt like the entire world had turned upside down. No, it wasn't a feeling. Chen Zhao realized that his feet had left the ground and he was falling toward the roof. Gravity magic. It wasn't Chen Zhao's first time encountering gravity magic. However, this spell was not a gravity spell. Chen Zhao quickly realized that the feeling of weightlessness wasn't because of gravity. Instead, it was because of his senses. The old man in front of him had his eyes closed, and his magic directly affected his senses. Moreover, this effect wasn't immune to magic resistance. His non-elemental body didn't react at all. After Chen Zhao's feet left the ground slightly, he sank back down and stood on the ground again. It wasn't that Chen Zhao had overcome this sensory magic. Instead, Chen Zhao directly accepted this posture of his head down and feet up. With Chen Zhao's strength, flying upside down wasn't a problem. After overcoming the psychological barrier, this posture wasn't a problem anymore. The biggest effect of this magic was to deceive the senses. Rodman frowned again. The intruder before him could block his magic attack twice. He didn't seem like a normal person. Chen Zhao felt Rodman's magic start to circulate wildly. It seemed that the old man was going to fight him for real. Old man, don't fight me to the death. There's someone fiercer behind. I'm responsible for holding him back and he's responsible for stealing the corpses. How about we stop fighting here? You can save some energy and magic to deal with the one behind. How about that? Just then, Chen Zhao felt that Rodman's magic wave was even fiercer than before. It was like a flood from a broken dam, ready to pour down at any time. Rodman's eyelids kept moving, as if he was going to open his eyes. Rodman was also hesitating. The person before him was definitely not an ordinary spiritualist. He definitely couldn't beat him with his eyes closed. Even with the group of youngsters outside, he had no chance of winning. His only chance was to open his eyes. He could directly activate blind, which he could only use once in his life. Of course, if he activated blind, he would definitely win. But he would also lose his greatest trump card. This was also why Rodman was hesitating. Rodman was not someone who had no desires or desires. If the opponent was someone extremely powerful, or if it was a duel between two people, Rodman would activate blind without hesitation. But the problem was that the opponent wasn't. Chapter 2202. No matter what anyone did, there was always a value or not. In Rodman's eyes, Chen Zhao was the unworthy type. Activating the once-in-a-lifetime blind eye on Chen Zhao wasn't worth it at all. Gradually, Chen Zhao felt Rodman's magical waves calm down. Ha! Did he give up? Chen Zhao smiled and turned to leave. He didn't know why Rodman would give up the thought of risking his life. But it was good for him. After all, he didn't want to fight Rodman. After leaving the mansion, Chen Zhao started sneaking around again. No one was chasing him anymore. Chen Zhao jumped onto the wall and found Bifla. It's your turn. There's a fierce old man inside. Be careful. I know him, Bifla said indifferently. I'm just surprised that he didn't attack you. Is that old man really strong? Chen Zhao asked. I can feel his magical waves. He's an expert, but he shouldn't be at your level. His magical level can't even be in the top 100 in the entire spiritual world, but in terms of danger, even 10 celestial master Zhangs might not be his match. Chen Zhao's eyes widened. No way. What level is Zhang? Did you get it wrong? That old man can't beat Zhang even 10 times. You're saying that even 10 Zhangs can't beat him. That old man doesn't have any other abilities. His magic power is above average, and his mastery of magic is above average. However, he has mastered one type of magic to its essence. He only uses it once in his life, and this magic is enough to kill all spiritualists. Chen Zhao sucked in a breath of cold air. Even though before I had exaggerated it so much, Chen Zhao still believed him. Including you. That move is terrifying, but it's not invincible. Both Celestial Master Zhang and I have a way to counter it. In the spiritual world, strength is still the most important. What way? Bifla glanced at Chen Zhao. His figure gradually disappeared before Chen Zhao. Pfft. Putting on airs again. A few minutes later, Chen Zhao saw Bifla drag 2 corpses out. The 2 corpses were in a body bag. Chen Zhao wasn't interested in opening the bag. Alright, let's go. Chen Zhao took 2 steps back, not planning to take over at all. However, Madhwa Shinji did not wait at the place they had agreed to. What should we do now? That motto disappeared. Chen Zhao looked around. Everything was dark. There was no sign of motto Xang at all. Bifla looked at the time. Wait for her for 5 minutes. If she doesn't come, we'll go back to the underground base ourselves. She either escaped or got caught. There's no need to wait for her. Chen Zhao didn't care about Madhwa Xang's life or death. Bifla knew this as well, but he still waited for 5 minutes. 5 minutes later, Madhwa Shinji still did not appear. We can go now. Bifla dragged the 2 corpses and disappeared into the night without looking back. After returning to the underground base, Ruik Des looked at Chen Zhao and Bifla. Where's Madhwa? Missing, Chen Zhao said. Disappeared. Luke Des was doubtful about this. After all, Chen Zhao and Bifla were assassins. He even suspected that Chen Zhao and Bifla had killed Madhwa Shinji. Why would she disappear? Chen Zhao told him the plan the 3 had come up with earlier. Luke Des furrowed his brows. He suspected that Chen Zhao was lying, but it wasn't likely. There was also another possibility. Madwa Shinji had been caught. Didn't you find any clues? As assassins, you should be good at this, right? We're assassins, not hunters. Take me to where Madwa disappeared, Luke Des said. Now. Chen Zhao wasn't very willing. We just finished a high-risk mission, Bifla said indifferently. Also, this is the first time in my career that I didn't receive any advance payment, so before we get the benefits, we won't listen to any of your orders. What he means is what I mean, Chen Zhao added. In Luke Des's eyes, Chen Zhao and Bifla were two big problems. He secretly decided that after he finished using them, he would let them die. Help me find Madwa Shinji. After it's done, I'll arrange a feast of slaughter for you. As long as you're strong enough, you can kill those preys as you please. Even though Chen Zhao and Bifla could tell what Luke Des was thinking, they still pretended to be interested. You said it, Bifla said coldly. If you can't satisfy my desire to kill, I'll start a massacre here. That's what you said. If you can't satisfy my desire to kill, I'll start a massacre here, said Bifla coldly. Then lead the way. Luke Des's tone was much colder. Then lead the way. Luke Des's tone was much colder. Chen Zhao and Bifla brought Luke Des back to the old place. At the time, the three of us were lying in ambush on this small hill. After sunset, we followed the plan and entered the villa. Miss Madwa was in charge of supporting us and helping us monitor the movements in the villa. But when we came back with the corpse, we found that she was already gone. Loic Des's face darkened. As he listened to Chen Zhao's explanation, he looked around. There was a weak magic reaction in this area. It should have been about 3 hours since the incident happened. But he could still feel the magic waves here. This meant that a very powerful spiritualist had been here. This also eliminated the possibility of Chen Zhao and Bifla's betrayal. At least in Luke Des's eyes, Chen Zhao and Bifla were two murderous killers, not spiritualists. There weren't many marks at the scene, and there weren't any serious signs of a fight. This only meant that Madwa Shinji had been controlled in an instant. Otherwise, she could at least use the berserk potion that he'd given her. She didn't even have the chance to use the berserk potion. This meant that this person was far more powerful than her. There's a weird smell here. Bifla suddenly rubbed his nose, acting uncomfortable. Weird smell. Luke Des turned his head to look at Bifla. What kind of weird smell? It's similar to your lab, Bifla said. What's this? Chen Zhao picked up a scale at an appropriate time. Luke Des immediately snatched the scale from Chen Zhao's hands. This is. Ruik instantly recognized the origin of the scale. Chapter 2203. In the spiritual world, there were many supernatural races with scales. The most prominent was, of course, the dragon race. But dragons were a minority. They couldn't compare to the total number of humans. Even the human spiritualists in the spirit world only made up a small portion of them. But the scale in Ruik's hand wasn't a dragon. If this was a dragon scale, Ruik Des would definitely turn around and leave. It was a snake scale. More accurately, it was a scale left behind by the swamp race. The swamp race was actually a snake demon. In the East, they were snake demons. But in the East, they couldn't form a race. In the West, they gathered themselves and formed a race. They called themselves the swamp race. They even formed a certain scale. The swamp race was a powerful force in the spiritual world. But they weren't the strongest. There were tens of thousands of swamp people. But they didn't have any top experts. Moreover, the descendants of the swamp race would mostly show signs of atavism. The so-called atavism was a litter of newborns. Most of them were ordinary snakes. Only a small number would inherit the name of the swamp race. Plus, there were human activities and the resources they possessed. So the swamp race's limit of 10,000 people was basically the limit. Of course, they could develop. This was mostly because their development path and ideals were in line with the values of modern society. Although their name was a bit scary. Actually, the other forces in the spiritual world had deep interactions with the swamp race. Ruik held the scale and thought for a long time. The swamp race was very difficult to deal with. They didn't have the terrifying, suffocating feeling of the dragons. But he still couldn't fight against them. Of course, it wasn't the entire swamp race in Istanbul. So Ruik was still hesitant about whether to risk starting a war with the swamp race. It could be seen from Ruik's hesitation. The difference between the swamp race and the dragons. In the end, Ruik decided to save Motto Xing. Do you want to start a massacre? Ruik Des turned to look at Qin Zhao and Bifla. You know the answer, Bifla replied indifferently. But you're not strong enough. Do you want to become stronger? Qin Zhao and Bifla both looked up at Ruik Des. Both of them wanted to see what Ruik Dales had up his sleeve. You all possess talents that mortals cannot hope to attain. For ordinary people, the modification experiments are incomparably dangerous, but for you, it is not even comparable to the tempering you have experienced in the past. Just tell me, what do we need to do? My previous plan was to create a Superman. And then. But in my plan, I neglected the endurance of most people. In the end, I adjusted the plan. This modification experiment is actually a simplified version of the old plan. I originally thought that the plan would never start, until I met you guys. Of course I'm fine with it, Chen Zhao said honestly. As long as I can become stronger, I'm willing to accept your plan. Ruik Des looked at Bifla. What about you? He accepts it, and so do I. After returning to the underground base, Ruik Des brought the two of them to an area. Chen Zhao and Bifla had never been to this area before. In this area, there were some seemingly old instruments. They looked like products from the 50s or 60s of the last century. Perhaps because they had not been used for a long time, the instruments were covered in dust and even a bit damaged. Help me turn on the power. Also, help me open the valve over there. After turning on the power and valve, some indicator lights of the instruments lit up. At the same time, some thick liquid flowed through the pipes into two containers. Is this liquid the same as the magic potion we used before? Chen Zhao asked. In essence, it's the same, but the purity is higher. The one you used before was diluted. The first magic potion in the experiment was diluted to less than 5%. In every subsequent experiment, the purity would increase by 5%. The magic potion in front of you is 100% pure. Will these potions go bad? It looks like they have been stored for decades. The raw materials of these potions have been deposited for hundreds or even thousands of years, so they won't go bad. Even if they are stored for 10 times longer, their effects will not change. Chen Zhao and Bifla could both feel that Ruik Des definitely did not want them to become stronger. It was not to satisfy their desires. Ruik Des thought that he had everything under control. He thought that Chen Zhao and Bifla were doing this for the desire to kill. In reality, it was just to satisfy their evil interests. Take off your clothes and enter the containers, Ruik Des said. Leave the rest to me. You better be careful. Bifla's voice rang in Chen Zhao's ears. These potions are much stronger than the ones before. If they accidentally invade your body, your brain will be wiped out. I'll tell you the same thing, Chen Zhao said, looking at Bifla. What are you talking about? Hurry up and go in. Don't waste time. Chen Zhao looked back at Ruik Des. Fine. When Chen Zhao stepped into the container, he immediately felt the potions corrode his skin like sharp blades. Unfortunately, the effects were indeed strong to normal people. But they could not affect Chen Zhao. Bifla followed closely behind and stepped into the container. Ruik Des turned on the device. Chen Zhao could feel a high-voltage electricity being injected into the potions. The electricity also made the potion stronger. Unfortunately, Chen Zhao's upper limit was too high. Even the enhanced potion could not work on Chen Zhao. Ruik Des frowned and stared at Chen Zhao and Bifla, who were soaking in the containers. The two's reactions were too calm. In the past, the experimental bodies in these two containers would struggle wildly in every generation. But Chen Zhao and Bifla acted as if nothing had happened. They were calmly soaking in the potions. In fact, Ruik Des had never thought of success when he suggested the superhuman transformation. What he needed was combat power, a combat power that he could control. Not a successful experimental body. But Chen Zhao and Bifla did not react during the experiment. Their lack of reaction made him wonder if the two of them could really succeed. Chen Zhao, who had been in the container, suddenly opened his eyes. Chapter 2204. Out of the corner of his eye, Rooker glanced at the concentration monitor. The concentration of the potion was dropping rapidly. In the container, Chen Zhao could feel that something in his body was interacting with the potion's effects. Potion X. Chen Zhao had taken a lot of it before. At first, it was indeed effective. But more of the potion settled in his body. Chen Zhao thought that it was an extra part. But now, Potion X was interacting with the potion in the container. In just a few minutes, Chen Zhao had completely absorbed the concentration of the potion in the container. The potion was like drops of water, nourishing Chen Zhao's body. The nourishment was very subtle, but it was really happening. If it was a normal person, each drop could make them superhuman. It was mainly because Chen Zhao's upper limit was too high. The neutralization of the two potions also increased Chen Zhao's upper limit. When the concentration of the potion was completely diluted, the container was shattered. Chen Zhao twisted his neck and looked at Rooker. Ruik Des was still in a state of shock. You succeeded. You absorbed the potion. The man before him didn't go crazy. This was simply too inconceivable. Chen Zhao didn't answer Rooker's question. Instead, he turned to look at the container beside him and at Bifla. Just then, Bifla opened his eyes too. Bifla also shattered the container. Rooker saw Bifla calmly walk out of the container. He was shocked again. Success on the first try was surprising but understandable. But succeeding twice at the same time was unbelievable. Both of them had succeeded. This meant that his plan to control them had failed. After all, he could only control Chen Zhao and Bifla if they lost control. Not bad. Looks like my body has improved a lot. Bifla clenched his fists. Chen Zhao glanced at Bifla. It seemed that Bifla had improved too. He also felt that Bifla had improved more than Chen Zhao. Don't you feel anything strange? Rooker looked at Chen Zhao and Bifla with sparkling eyes. No, Bifla said calmly. It's very comfortable. Me too. All right. Ruik Dale still held on to the last glimmer of hope. He hoped that Chen Zhao and Bifla's stability was only temporary. But Chen Zhao and Bifla didn't react at all. But at this moment, even though his heart was filled with disappointment, Ruik Des could not show it either. After all, he still needed to rely on the two of them to rescue Madhua Shinji. Now that you've gotten what you want, it's time for you to contribute. Do you have any questions? Of course, it's my pleasure. Killing, this is what I pursue. Bifla's cold expression was as if he was stating a fact. We will depart in an hour. I will gather everyone and move together. Since Ruik Des had made up his mind to start a war with the swamp tribe. In that case, this underground base would have to be abandoned. These subordinates who had undergone the experiments would also be completely abandoned. Therefore, there was no need to hide it anymore. He might as well throw himself into this battle. If possible, he naturally hoped to bring as many of his subordinates as possible. However, most of his subordinates were criminals. Basically, they were the type that would die in the light. It would be fine if it was just one or two of them. If a large group of people appeared in public view at the same time. Basically, it would directly invite the government's encirclement and suppression. This was also the reason why he kept his subordinates in the underground base for so long. Among these subordinates, many were like Qin Zhao and Bifla. They were even crueler and more bloodthirsty. An hour later, everyone was assembled. Many people had excited expressions on their faces. They seemed to really believe that this would be a feast of slaughter. They did not know who their opponent was this time. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Ruik Des prepared 2 large trucks and let everyone squeeze into the 2 back compartments. However, Qin Zhao and Bifla were exceptions. Because they told Ruik Desai. If they were squeezed together with these people, they would kill everyone. Therefore, the 2 of them obtained the right to sit in the front passenger seat. Bifla, what do you plan to do? Are you really going to fight for Ruik Des? It's just a fight between 2 forces. Why should we interfere? Besides, the swamp tribe is also a strong competitor for our team. Isn't it better to have Ruik Descartes charge for us? Alright, I'll listen to you. In fact, that was his plan. Not long after, the 2 trucks sank into the soft mud. They could no longer rely on the vehicles to move forward. Everyone could only get out and move forward. It was a wet and filthy swamp. The feeling of stepping on the soft soil was very good. Even Qin Zhao and Bifla did not like this environment. There were also large patches of grass in the swamp. The grass was even taller than people. Ah! Suddenly, someone let out a blood-curdling scream. Ruik Desai turned around and saw that his subordinate had been bitten by a poisonous snake in the grass. Before he could save him, the poison had already taken effect. Everyone, apply the snake repellent. Ruik Desai had prepared this beforehand. Even Qin Zhao and Bifla had received the snake repellent. As expected, after applying the drug, the poisonous snakes hiding in the dark all fled the area. Even though a large portion of these venomous snakes were controlled. However, this control could not surpass the snake's instinct. The snake repellent would make the user emit an extremely pungent smell. Snakes could not even get close to the user. But in this swamp, they did not only have to face the hidden poisonous snakes. They also had to face the swamp itself. At this moment, someone began to cry for help. I'm stuck in the mud. Help me pull me out. I need help too, me too. Suddenly, the moonlight in the sky was covered by dark clouds. Qin Zhao and Bifla looked up. They realized that it was not the dark clouds that covered the moonlight, but magic power. The dark clouds in the sky had been created by magic. A few minutes later, it started raining. The snake repellent on everyone was quickly washed away. The swamp race looks pretty strong, Qin Zhao said in a low voice. Of course. None of the teams or individuals who can participate in the Holy Glory battle are simple. That's nothing. The swamp race is proficient in many types of magic. Poison, water, and curse are the most prominent. Looks like Ruik Desai has underestimated the enemy when he brought people to cause trouble. Shouldn't we balance out the strength of both sides? Chapter 2205. Suddenly, Chen Zhao felt many presences appear around the swamp. They were all spiritualists and there were more than 10 of them. What's going on? Why are there so many people? Chen Zhao turned to look at Bifla in surprise. Looks like it's a trap, Bifla said. A trap? Against us? Or Ruik Des? Of course it's a trap against him. Do you think these people can threaten us? While Chen Zhao and Bifla were talking, Ruik Des was still having a headache over his subordinates. It was raining heavily and the ground was even more muddy. Many venomous snakes were also hiding in the grass, mud, and puddles. At any time, they would bring deadly venom attacks to those who approached them. He didn't realize that he was leading his subordinates into a trap step by step. Ruik Des looked back at Chen Zhao and Bifla. Chen Zhao and Bifla were also drenched in the rain, but they looked very calm. They weren't impulsive or bloodthirsty at all. Suddenly, there was another scream from behind. A huge snake pounced out of the darkness. It bit a person and then retreated into the grass. It's here. Ruik Des exclaimed inwardly. This exaggerated snake wasn't an ordinary species. They were actually descendants of the swamp race, but they'd all reverted to their ancestors. They couldn't have both human and snake forms like the swamp race. They could only maintain their snake form. But they also had talents that the swamp race didn't have. They were born with venomous fangs and huge bodies. They were also born smarter than ordinary snakes. Usually, the swamp race lived in families. There were 2 adult swamp race couples, 1 or 2 young swamp race members, and the couple's reverted children. Moreover, the number of reverted children far exceeded the number of young children. Sometimes, there might not even be a child in a nest of snake eggs. So, when these descendants appeared, it meant that the swamp race had appeared. More and more descendants of atavism appeared in the surroundings. Some of the descendants no longer hid themselves and openly appeared in front of Ruik Dales and the others. Among them, there was a particularly large snake that raised its neck high like a snake king. Just the head of the snake standing in front of everyone was already 7 to 8 meters long, and this was not even a third of its length. On top of the snake's head stood a figure. It was a woman, tall and slender, wearing tight clothes. His white hair reached his waist and was extremely eye-catching. Ruik Des, you really came. Let's settle our scores today. Ruik Des looked up at the person standing on top of the snake's head. Medusa, are you going to settle old scores with me? Ruik looked coldly at the white-haired woman. All the swamp tribe called themselves the descendants of Medusa. Therefore, all of the swamp tribe had the surname Medusa. Shouldn't I? You experimented on my child and caused his tragic death. Don't I have the right to settle the score with you? Ruik sneered at Medusa. You were the one who asked me to experiment on your swamp tribe. Have you forgotten? I didn't agree to let you use my child as an experiment. Medusa's tone was full of resentment. You also didn't say that I couldn't experiment on your child. It's useless to say more. Don't think of leaving here today. That's good. I happen to lack materials for the swamp tribe. You can add new experimental materials to my lab. Ruik Des shouted, do it. With that, Ruik Des quickly threw out a metal ball. The metal ball exploded before it hit the ground. However, the explosion of the metal ball wasn't very powerful. It couldn't even be killed by ordinary people. Not to mention there were huge groups of monsters here. Medusa, however, sensed danger. She immediately controlled the snake under her feet to dodge. Just as she had expected, the moment the metal ball exploded, countless golden needles shot out. These golden needles pierced the skin of the surrounding snakes, immediately numbing the places they pierced. Medusa immediately remembered that Ruick Des was a very powerful alchemist. The surrounding atavistic progeny collapsed to the ground and became meat on the chopping board. Only the snake under her feet was unharmed. This was mainly due to its almost indestructible skin. The snake under Medusa's feet was her descendant. It had also inherited a portion of Medusa's power. It could petrify its enemies and also its own snake skin. It was one of the very few descendants that could release magic. The snake's huge tail swept across with all its might. More than 10 people were swept away. Ruick Des had dodged in time, so he wasn't swept away. Otherwise, even if it was him, he would have been heavily injured. Ruick Des was very powerful, but he wasn't good at close combat. However, he hadn't come alone this time. "Kill all living creatures here," Ruick Des ordered. At the same time, he glanced at his subordinates. However, after looking around for a while, he couldn't find Qin Zhao and Bifla. Damn, where did those two asterisk holes go? By now, Medusa's other descendants were already in full contact with Ruick Des's subordinates. Along the way, Ruick Des had lost many people. However, he had seized the opportunity just now and also made Medusa lose many descendants. For now, it was hard to tell who had the upper hand. "Looks like the situation isn't in Ruick Des's favor," Qin Zhao said. "You've neglected Ruick Des's own power. He doesn't have the advantage in numbers, but he has extraordinary power. He's not easy to deal with." More than 10 snakes wreaked havoc on the battlefield. Other than Qin Zhao and Bifla who were watching, the others had already joined the battle. After the modification experiments, Ruick Des's subordinates could be considered half-superhumans. Their speed and power had reached heights that humans could never reach. Both sides were losing more and more people. But for Medusa, the casualties of these atavistic children were acceptable. Atavistic children were considered pets in the swamp tribe's families. Even if they were Medusa's children. But to the swamp race, these descendants weren't even recognized as members of Iron Gate. Ruick Des didn't care about casualties either. Most of his subordinates were going to be abandoned anyway. So, while they were still useful, Ruick Des didn't mind wasting more subordinates. Chapter 2206. Ruick Des's men and Medusa's heirs were in a chaotic battle. However, it was obvious that Ruick's subordinates were weaker than Medusa's offspring. The snakes were shockingly powerful. They could tear everything apart. On the other hand, Ruick Des had a slight advantage against Medusa. He didn't even need to use other spells. Just the potions were enough to keep Medusa and her offspring at bay. While dealing with Medusa, Ruick Des observed the situation around him. His subordinates kept losing, and if this continued, he would soon become a loner. Qin Zhao and Bifla, whom he had high hopes for, were nowhere to be found. He didn't know that Qin Zhao and Bifla were watching the show from a nearby tree branch. However, Ruick Des sensed that someone else was approaching. Ruick Des's expression changed drastically. It was a trap. Medusa wasn't the only one waiting for him. Someone else was also plotting against him. Plan B. Ruick Des shouted. His remaining subordinates immediately took out a green potion. He'd given this potion to Mato Shinji before. And for this operation, Ruick Des had prepared a copy for everyone. It was prepared for emergencies and could be used as a trump card at a critical moment. After using the potion, the people immediately went berserk. Their strength increased greatly. At first, they were suppressed by the snakes. In the blink of an eye, they had the strength to fight against the snakes. In fact, their strength had even surpassed their opponents. At the same time, Ruick Des's body emitted a black aura of death. He released it in the direction of the uninvited guests. Just then, a strong wind howled in the opposite direction, blowing the aura of death away. Dozens of spiritualists appeared from all directions and surrounded Ruik Des. Ruik Des only recognized a few of them. Most of them were unrelated to him. He hadn't even met them before. A bespectacled man in a suit walked out of the crowd. This spiritualist looked more like an elite in the workplace and not a spiritualist who pretended to be mysterious. Ruik, how have you been? The bespectacled man put his hands in his pockets and smiled at Ruik Des. When you see me, you should know what I want. Give it to me, and I'll leave. How would I know what you want? Ruik said indifferently. Ha! Why bother putting on an act? I know that the ring of restlessness is in your hands. What ring of restlessness? I've never even heard of it. Ruik Des continued to deny it. The spiritualists around the suited man were a little suspicious. A few of them looked at the bespectacled man suspiciously. It seemed that they weren't completely in cahoots. They were probably lured here by the bespectacled man using treasures. Do you think you can escape by denying it? Don't be naive. If you don't hand it over today, don't even think about going anywhere. I'll go wherever I want to go. Do you really think that you and that motley crew can stop me? Ruik Des had his own pride. Even though he was facing dozens of powerful spiritualists, he didn't flinch either. To be precise, he had no other choice. It was impossible to escape. He might as well fight for his life. These people weren't weak at all. But they were still weaker than Qin Zhao. There were many of them, but they weren't on the same side. Most of them had ulterior motives. They had the same goal, but not everyone could work together. If they could scare them, the spiritualists could easily break through the front line. Qin Zhao and Bifla blended into the crowd. No one noticed their abnormality. What's the ring of restlessness? It's an alchemy product of ancient Egypt. It contains the souls and magic of the 10 most powerful spiritualists of that era. Whoever has the ring of restlessness can control all the spells and magic of that spiritualist. You mean the 10 most powerful spiritualists of that era? The longer the time, the more magic flourishes. The 10 most powerful spiritualists of that era were at least at Lao Zhang's level, right? Wouldn't 10 spiritualists at Lao Zhang's level be the same as invincible? You're thinking too much. A spiritualist at Master Zhang's level is extremely rare in any era. In ancient times, or even in ancient times, there were only a handful of them. Moreover, I'm talking about ancient Egypt. How many people at Master Zhang's level would there be in an ancient Egyptian country? Besides, do you think someone at Zhang Tianchu's level would allow others to imprison his soul in a magical tool? Even the pharaohs back then didn't have that right. Then forget it. It doesn't seem that rare. The function of the ring of restlessness is indeed unattractive to you and me. However, before the ring of restlessness was infused with the souls of 10 spiritualists, it was already a divine artifact. According to legend, the 3 treasures passed down by the pharaohs were the Eye of Truth, the Anubis scepter, and the Ring of Restlessness. Then how did it end up in Ruik Des' hands? How would I know? After ancient Egypt was destroyed, the pharaoh's treasures were split up. It's not surprising that it ended up in someone else's hands. Then what's the use of the Ring of Restlessness? I don't know, Bifla said. At this moment, the situation on the field changed again. The man in glasses pushed Mado Shinji out. Madwa Shinji's body was tied with magic ropes, and no matter how hard she struggled, she could not break free from the magic ropes. I know what she means to you, the man in glasses said. Give me the Ring of Restlessness, or she'll die in front of you. Finally, Ruik Des couldn't stay calm anymore. His face darkened. That's not fun, Bifla said. Mado Shinji isn't his daughter, right? Chen Zhao asked curiously. He paid such a huge price and even used all his power. He even knew that there was danger, but he still took the risk. I don't believe that they're not related. Mado Shinji isn't his daughter. She's his heir. Heir? She's just an heir. Is she that important? This kind of heir is very special. Before Mado Shinji was born, her identity was already determined. You're talking about fate. It's not fate. Ruik Des separated a part of his soul when Madwa Shinji's mother was pregnant with her, and then placed it in Madwa Shinji's mother's body. Finally, Madwa Shinji was born. This is also another kind of longevity. When did you know? Very early on, when I saw Ruik Des and Mado Shinji appear in front of me together, I already saw it. Chen Zhao was a little depressed because he hadn't seen anything. Chapter 2207. Ruik Des's face grew colder and colder. Both sides of Madwa Shinji were powerful spiritualists. They could deal with almost any problem. At least, it was almost impossible for Ruik Des to save Madwa Shinji before she was hurt. Do you want the Ring of Restlessness? Sure. Ruik Des took out a golden ring and tossed it casually. The golden ring hovered in the center of the field. The eyes of the dozens of spirit controllers shone brightly. More than a dozen spiritualists reacted quickly and rushed forward to snatch it without hesitation. These spiritualists grabbed the golden ring almost at the same time. Mine. Let go. You're the ones who should let go. This is a divine artifact. Lowly people like you aren't qualified to have it. But the next moment, everyone suddenly realized that their palms couldn't break free from the Ring of Restlessness. A terrifying suction force suddenly appeared on the Ring of Restlessness. Damn it, what's going on? Oh no, we've been tricked. Then, the Ring of Restlessness began to move up, and more than a dozen arms were completely bound. The diameter of the Ring of Restlessness was less than 30 centimeters, and it forcibly bound more than a dozen arms. The pain the owners of these arms endured was unimaginable. Save us, my arm. My arm, this wasn't the worst. At this time, the arms of these spiritualists that were bound by the Ring of Restlessness began to disintegrate. Their arms seemed to be dissolving by something, gradually disintegrating and disappearing. This made them even more painful, but they couldn't do anything. Not only were their arms disintegrating, but their magic power was also constantly tilting outwards. And the Ring of Restlessness's goal wasn't just their arms, but their entire bodies. At this time, one of the spiritualists was forcibly pulled into the Ring of Restlessness. The others were frightened. They realized that this Ring of Restlessness wasn't used to bind them. Instead, it treated them as food. Someone tried to break his arm directly, but not only was the broken arm instantly swallowed, but even the blood that spurted out was also sucked into the Ring of Restlessness. At the same time, even the blood in his body was extracted. The spiritualists around who weren't bound also tried to rescue them. But in the end, they made no progress, and even they were in great danger. In just 2 to 3 minutes, the dozen or so spiritualists were all devoured by the Ring of Restlessness. Medusa and the bespectacled man's pupils constricted. Even though they all wanted the Ring of Restlessness, they didn't dare to touch it at this time. Ruik Des walked in front of the Ring of Endlessness and caught it. Is this the divine weapon you want? It's right in front of you. Do you dare to take it? You must have the spell to control the Ring of Restlessness. Hand it over, or I'll kill her now. The bespectacled man placed his palm on Madwa Shinji's neck. Madwa Shinji was anxious and angry. But compared to the spiritualists present, her strength was really not worth mentioning. Ruik Des's expression was cold as he held the ring of restlessness in his hands and placed it behind his head. The ring of restlessness didn't touch Ruik Dorge's. Instead, it hovered vertically at the back of Ruik Dorge's head like a *** hole. At the same time, Ruik's aura began to grow stronger. Moreover, this kind of strength was not the end, but a starting point. Everyone at the scene was moved by this. They all felt the raging waves of magic. Even the bespectacled man took a few steps back unconsciously. Terrifying. Too terrifying. Before Ruik Des kept growing stronger, he suddenly sensed Chen Zhao and Baifla's location. Ruik Des looked at where Chen Zhao and Baifla were. The two were in the crowd of spiritualists, slowly approaching Madhua Shinji. The bespectacled man grabbed Madhua Shinji's neck nervously. Hand over the ring of restlessness and the control spell immediately, or I'll kill her now. But just then, the bespectacled man suddenly felt a chill behind him. The bespectacled man reacted quickly and jumped more than 10 meters away. Madhua Shinji suddenly saw the two spiritualists who were guarding her fall to the ground without warning. Madhua Shinji turned her head and saw Chen Zhao and Baifla standing on either side of her. Mr. Des, please continue. Miss Madhua is safe now. I'll make sure that they won't use her as a bargaining chip to threaten you. Smiling, Chen Zhao looked at Ruik Des. Glancing at Chen Zhao and Baifla, Ruik Des took a deep breath at the same time. Who are you? The bespectacled man was furious. Originally, with Madhua Shinji in their hands, they were in an invincible position. No matter how strong Ruik Des was, he would eventually lose. Even with so many spiritualists, they couldn't kill Ruik Des. At least with Madhua Shinji, Ruik Des didn't dare to advance recklessly. But it was different now. Madhua Shinji had been kidnapped by two unknown people. Ruik Des's eyes flashed. He couldn't figure out Chen Zhao and Baifla's goal. Previously, Chen Zhao and Baifla hadn't appeared. Now that they'd appeared voluntarily, Ruik Des couldn't understand. Moreover, Chen Zhao and Baifla were standing on either side of Madhua Shinji. This made Ruik Des feel that Chen Zhao and Baifla were up to no good. In fact, Chen Zhao and Baifla had attacked. It wasn't for a fair fight. It was just because Madhua Shinji was a hostage that made Ruik Des feel troubled. As long as Madhua Shinji was held hostage, Ruik Des couldn't use his full power no matter how strong he was. So, Chen Zhao and Baifla decided to get rid of Ruik Des's biggest restriction. He didn't need to be restrained anymore. Ruik Des was suspicious of Chen Zhao and Baifla's goal. But he knew that this wasn't the time to settle scores with them. He had to deal with the enemies on the surface first. Plus, Chen Zhao and Baifla were protecting Madhua Shinji, which made him feel trustworthy. Fom, you don't have any trump cards that can threaten me anymore. What should you do now? The bespectacled man named Fom adjusted his glasses. Even if you don't know, the result won't change. You might be able to defeat any one of us, but you are now facing 6 teams, and you are alone. You have no chance of winning. Really? You think you can turn the situation around with enough people? You think you can win for sure? If you're really confident in beating so many people, you wouldn't be wasting time here, Marfa said coldly. Chapter 2208. Ruik Des laughed angrily. Do you all think so? Mr. Des, I look forward to you turning the situation around. Chen and Baifla wanted to take Madhua Shinji away from the center of the battlefield. But the spiritualists clearly didn't intend to let them go so easily. Just then, Baifla pulled out 2 desert eagles out of nowhere. Bang, bang, bang. The three spiritualists who stood in front of them fell to the ground. Don't block our way. The spiritualists couldn't help but look serious. To be able to kill three powerful spiritualists in an instant. No matter what method was used, it was enough to show how powerful the person who did it was. Could ordinary guns really kill three spiritualists so easily? No one would have such a ridiculous thought. But Bifla really did it, and it was so easy. Even Ruik Des was surprised. Could it be that the modification experiment really caused such a strange change to the two of them? But even so, they couldn't increase the power of the guns, right? No matter how strong their bodies were, they couldn't change the power of the guns. Ruik Des was familiar with the three spiritualists who were killed instantly. They should be relatively outstanding spiritualists. But they died very unjustly. They were so easily shot in the head. Could it be that their guns had been modified? And the three spiritualists underestimated the enemy? That should be the most reasonable explanation. But even so, the surrounding spiritualists still looked serious. The spiritualists who originally wanted to step forward to stop them couldn't help but take a step back. Obviously, they weren't ready to die. Mado Shinji had been observing the situation ever since she was freed. The appearance of Chin and Bifla was out of everyone's expectations. And Mado Shinji knew how powerful the three spiritualists who were killed were. More accurately, how terrifying and strange they were. For Mado Shinji, magic was full of strangeness and uncertainty. But Bifla killed them with the most ordinary gun. This made Mado Shinji a little dazed. Just then, a body shining with golden light blocked in front of everyone. This person looked like his skin was plated with a layer of gold. "Let me try your gun," the golden-skinned man said. Bifla put down his gun. The golden-skinned man revealed a proud smile. He seemed to think that his invincible Vajra body had scared the other party. Bifla glanced at Chin. Chin suddenly took a step forward. Without giving his opponent a chance to react, Chin punched him in the stomach. The golden-skinned man clutched his stomach and fell to the ground, spittle flying everywhere. Ruik Des widened his eyes suddenly. How could this be? That was a variant of the enhancers of the West Asian region. It could also be called the metal strengthening system. That person was using the body of gold. Gold itself had an extremely strong resistance to attacks. Furthermore, it had excellent plasticity and toughness. He was extraordinarily strong. However, the metal enhancement spiritualist was killed by Chen's punch. After taking care of this metal strengthening major, Chen Zhao turned to look at Ruik Des. "Mr. Sanders, don't disappoint us." Ruik snorted coldly, but Chen's words still ignited his competitive spirit. Ruik Des's arms hung low, his body rippling with magic power like a raging wave. At this moment, the rain in the sky stopped. The ground quickly began to dry up. A moment ago, it had been a swamp. The next moment, it had become dry and cracked land. A gust of night wind blew, bringing up a cloud of sand. Damn, he's using a super large-scale spell. Everyone was shocked. This was a large-scale spell, which meant that the consequences would be extremely terrifying. The wind grew stronger and stronger, sweeping up waves of sand. The sandstorm obscured everyone's vision. Cough, cough. Bastard. The sandstorm is too strong. We have to leave, cough, leave this area, or else we'll all be swallowed by the sandstorm. However, right at that moment, within the range of the sandstorm, figures appeared one after another. These figures were all condensed from the sand. Chen and Bifla stood on a steep slope with Mado Shinji. Apart from Mado, Chen and Bifla watched the battle with the attitude of watching a show. What spell is this? Sand hell, sandstorm, Bifla said. It's a type of ancient Egyptian spell. Nowadays, very few spiritualists can use it. It has a large range, but it's not powerful enough. This spell isn't good at killing. It's used to harass and hinder the opponent's movements, Bifla said. And you said it's not powerful enough. That's for us. For those guys, it can still cause quite a bit of trouble. Just as Bifla said, the Sandmen began to attack all living things in their range of activity. The ground turned from swamp to sand, and the environment from wet to dry. The ones who were affected the most weren't the spiritualists, but the swamp people and their descendants. The swamp people were used to wet environments. And the desert was the most beautiful place they were unwilling to approach. The large number of Sandmen surrounded the swamp people first. They might not be the strongest, but they were very troublesome. Also, the Sandman's intention wasn't to use this spell to directly cause casualties. His real goal was to stop Day from escaping. But these Sandmen weren't very powerful. Even the lowest level spell could shatter them. But they were like cockroaches that couldn't be killed. No matter how many times their bodies were shattered, they could always reform and stand up to fight again. No, we can't continue. We have to find a way to get out of this area. The water in my body is quickly evaporating. The true function of this sandstorm area was to constantly absorb the water of all the plants and animals around it. The human body was mostly liquid. So Ruach Des could easily deprive the enemy spiritualists of their water. Most of the time, the human body would store a certain amount of water. But this stored water was easily digested, or turned into sweat and evaporated. Once the water content in the body dropped to a certain level, a person's ability to move and think would plummet. It was the same for spiritualists. Once their body felt uncomfortable, their combat power and magic power would decrease. And this was only the first stage. The second stage was when their lives began to be in danger. Once enveloped by the sandstorm, as the water content decreased, the body's functions would decline overall. This was like a dangerous area in a game. Once a player entered a certain area, their health would begin to drop. This spell looks powerful. If I stand in it, the water in my body will also be absorbed. Chapter 2209. Mado Shinji could not hear the conversation between Qin Zhao and Bifla. She was already astonished by Ruach Des' miraculous power. Turning an entire swamp into a desert was something only a god could do. The man in glasses adjusted his glasses, his eyes serious. Trouble. Big trouble. The man in glasses was good at data analysis. He was not a battle-type spiritualist. His magic was similar to finding weaknesses. His brain would operate at high speed and come up with the best plan of action. However, this plan was not the best in the true sense. This was because it was a combination of all known data and factors. If the enemy had hidden or unexposed information and data, the man in glasses would not know and would not be able to integrate it into the plan. This was the situation for the man in glasses. Ruach Des had cast a new spell, one that had never been used before. This caught the man in glasses off guard. He knew Ruach Des and had fought with him many times. However, Ruach Des had never used this spell. Ruach Des should have mastered death magic and alchemy magic. He had never used this ancient spell. All he knew was that this spell wasn't owned by Ruach Des. It was given by the Ring of Restlessness. This made the man's desire for the Ring of Restlessness even stronger. He felt that only he was worthy of the Ring of Restlessness. The Ring of Restlessness, coupled with the magic he had now mastered, could make up for his shortcomings. At the same time, it would show the true power of the Ring of Restlessness. But, the first thing he had to face was the power of the Ring of Restlessness. The magic power of 10 of the most powerful spiritualists in ancient Egypt. And the magic they had. Medusa. Use your fog magic, hurry. Coit, use heavy rain. Daily, use wind magic to blow in the opposite direction. Terry, Tony, you guys can go all out now. The man in glasses quickly arranged and gave orders. They were all in the stage of water shortage. If they could not solve this problem soon, they might suffer from heat exhaustion. Spiritualists could not get sick. In fact, spiritualists could also get sick in an extremely short and harsh environment. Once they got sick, it would be extremely serious. Even if it was just heat exhaustion, it would be very serious. If a spiritualist fell ill, it could mean that the magic in their body was in disorder. Back then, when Chen Zhao devoured other people's magic power, his magic power became chaotic and he developed a magic allergy. This was the same example. Looks like Ruik Des didn't have an absolute advantage even with the divine artifact. That person is very good at deployment and strategy, Chen Zhao said. Obviously, it was the command of the bespectacled man that stabilized the chaotic situation. The rain suddenly fell from the sky, and at the same time, it was shrouded in dense fog. In the opposite direction of the sandstorm, the strong wind swept up the torrential rain, whistling towards the sandstorm. With the nourishment of the rain, the adverse reactions of the spiritualists were alleviated. The Sandman also melted and disintegrated after coming into contact with the rain. This is not enough, far from enough. Bifla shook his head. The power of the Ring of Restlessness is far greater than this. Sure enough, seeing that the situation was actually stabilized, Ruik Des immediately released a second spell. Voodoo. Disorder. Ruik Des's magic seeped into the dark clouds in the sky. The rain falling from the sky turned purple. Everyone, use your magic shields. Quick, quick, the bespectacled man shouted. Most spiritualists had magic shields, but not everyone had them. When some spiritualists touched the purple rain, they started going crazy and attacking their companions uncontrollably. They had never seen such a large-scale curse before. The bespectacled man's expression was serious. Fardu, use holy light magic to purify the curse on them. It's useless. My holy light purification doesn't work on them. This is an ancient Egyptian pollution curse. Holy light magic is useless against it. I need spiritual purification. Spiritual magic was already very rare, let alone spiritual purification. It was 1 in a million. It was even more impossible for any of them to have such a magic element. What do we do? The bespectacled man was also very lost. Facing his teammates' questions, he didn't know what to do either. He had many plans in his mind, but each plan required a certain price. For example, giving up on the cursed companions. But the consequences were equally severe. If he met these companions on the battlefield, no one would say anything even if he killed them. But now, they were on the same side. They weren't enemies. If he used his butcher knife on his companions, then he would be despised by everyone, including his teammates. What should he do? He also wanted to ask someone what to do. In the end, his gaze drifted to where Chen Zhao, Bifla, and Mato Shinji were hiding. In fact, the three didn't intend to hide at all. They just stood on a small slope and looked down at the battlefield. Go and capture those three. They're our only chance, the bespectacled man said. The situation was already very tense. But he still needed to split up some people. The speed at which they captured Chen Zhao, Bifla, and Mato Shinji would determine their success or failure. They're here. Mato Shinji's body immediately tensed. She turned to look at Chen Zhao and Bifla. She realized that one of them was sitting on a rock and the other was leaning against a tree. It was as if they didn't see the people charging up. The first to reach the slope was an enhancement spiritualist. But before he could say his lines, Chen Zhao kicked him and sent him rolling down the slope. Your opponents are over there, not here. If you think you can get an advantage from us, you'll be disappointed. Of course, Chen Zhao's words couldn't dispel their intentions. Therefore, they continued to charge forward aggressively. A fireball shot toward Chen Zhao's face. But before it could touch Chen Zhao, it suddenly disappeared. Mato Shinji's expression changed slightly. Chen Zhao and Bifla were both fighting at close range. No matter how strong they were, Mato Shinji felt that it was natural. But she sharply sensed the disappearance of the fireball. Chen Zhao's abnormality. Cough, cough, Bifla coughed softly. Chen Zhao also realized that he'd made a mistake. It wasn't just Mato Shinji who noticed. In the distance, Ruik Des saw it too. Chen Zhao and Bifla weren't the assassins he thought they were. At least, they weren't just assassins. 9 Heavens Divine King. Chapter 22:10. Instead, Ruik walked toward the slope. Compared to the glasses man and the others, it was more dangerous for Mato Shinji to stay with Chen Zhao and Bifla. She would only be truly safe when she was beside him. Mato Shinji also consciously moved away from Chen Zhao and Bifla. You lost. You exposed yourself first, Bifla said. Fine. Chen Zhao couldn't deny it no matter how shameless he was. He had lost this round. The non-elemental constitution had exposed his background. For the glasses man, this was an extremely bad situation. Ruik Des alone was already difficult for them to handle. Now, he realized that Ruik Des's 2 subordinates were also very strong. However, Ruik Des gave up on them. Instead, he turned to Chen Zhao and Bifla. Suddenly, Ruik Des attacked without any warning. His first move was a ray of black light. The black light was a black arrow. The black arrow shot toward Chen Zhao like a bolt of lightning. However, when the black arrow was a few inches away from Chen Zhao, it disintegrated and disappeared. Now, Ruik Des could finally confirm. Chen Zhao wasn't an ordinary person. He was a spiritualist just like him. Who are you? Ruik Des stared at Chen Zhao and Bifla coldly. Guess. Smiling, Chen Zhao looked at Ruik Des. Ruik Des didn't know who Chen Zhao and Bifla were. However, he naturally thought that Chen Zhao and Bifla were people who had stolen the endless loop. It was just that the two had hidden themselves too well. Perhaps they were thinking that the mantis was stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Ruik Des snorted coldly and reached out to grab at the void. A flaming spear appeared in his hand. Then, he threw Chen Zhao with all his might. The flaming spear tore through the air. Chen Zhao reached out and the spear collided with his palm. Boom! Accompanied by an earth-shattering explosion, a shockwave comparable to a guided missile swept in all directions. However, after the explosion, Ruik Des was shocked to find that Chen Zhao was unharmed. The sun spear that he had confidently thrown actually couldn't harm Chen Zhao at all. Disbelief was written all over his face. Alright, let's go, Bifla said. He could tell that Chen Zhao was getting serious. If Chen Zhao intervened, it would be unfair to either side. Chen Zhao's combat ability was comparable to Zhang Tianyi's. If Chen Zhao wanted to attack Zhang Tianyi, he would have no objections. But to Ruik Dale's, or the glasses man's side, it seemed like they were bullying the weak. Mr. Ruik, I had a great time with you. We'll be leaving now. I hope we can meet again. Smiling, Chen Zhao clapped his hands. Narrowing his eyes, Ruik looked at Qin Zhao and Bifla, who had really turned to leave. He was hesitating whether he should stop the two of them. However, before he could make a decision, Qin Zhao and Bifla had already blended into the darkness. It was difficult to find them again. Ruik's eyelids twitched. The strength of those two guys was not to be underestimated. If the two of them joined forces with the bespectacled man and the others to deal with him, he would really be in big trouble. In fact, if Qin Zhao and Bifla hadn't attacked earlier and allowed the bespectacled man and the others to hold Mado Shinji hostage, he would also be helpless. But even though they'd saved Mado Shinji, Ruik didn't think that they had good intentions. He felt that they'd retreated voluntarily because he'd discovered their identities. They'd retreated not because they had no ill intentions, but because they couldn't do anything to him. Nevertheless, their departure was a good thing for Ruik Dales. This way, he could focus on the bespectacled man and his accomplices. Of course, this time, he wouldn't let anyone threaten Mado Shinji's safety. Bifla, what do you think is going on with Mado Shinji and Ruik Dales? The world pursues immortality. In the magic era, magic was what they researched, or technology is what they are researching now. But no matter what method they use, the goal is the same. For example, I'm a good example. By seizing the physical body of others, I can continue on the spiritual level. Bifla said, actually, the reproduction of living things is also a way of extending oneself. It's also a way of extending oneself, but Ruik Des is different. He uses an even more unconventional method of extending himself. In the supernatural world, this method is called soul reproduction, and this method is actually very different from the most common method of reproduction between the sexes in nature. The process of soul reproduction is more complicated, and at least from a technical point of view, most people can't do this. Then how exactly do you do it? How would I know? I've never learned this kind of magic. There are probably less than 10 people in the world who know it, and probably only Ruik Dales dares to claim to be proficient in it. That rare? Is it very difficult to learn? It's not because it's difficult, but because the origin of soul reproduction is the magic system of ancient Egypt. Eunuchs didn't first appear in China, but in ancient Egypt. Because eunuchs served the pharaohs, they could be said to be their spokespersons. They had very high power and status, but because they couldn't reproduce, the spell of soul reproduction was born. To put it simply, spiritualists back then created soul reproduction to serve the powerful class of eunuchs. When they returned to the hotel, Qin Zhao and Bifla hurried back to their rooms. After all, they'd lived under the graveyard for 2 days. It wasn't a good feeling. After washing up, Qin Zhao knocked on Bifla's door in a relaxed manner. At the same time, Qin Zhao tossed a prepared gift box on Bifla's table. This is what I lost to you. Qin Zhao and Bifla didn't have a bet. Nevertheless, Qin Zhao was willing to admit defeat in this competition. Do you want to go eat something together? Bifla happily accepted Qin Zhao's invitation. In the restaurant, Qin Zhao and Bifla chose a seat by the window. Because of the time, there was no one in the restaurant at the moment. But in a 5-star hotel, all the shops were open 24 hours a day. However, the restaurant looked rather empty. Apart from Qin Zhao and Bifla, there were only 2 waiters working overtime to serve them. Bifla opened the gift box and glanced at it. Is this a dragon eye? What breed? Bifla asked. The dragon eye had gone through simple magic processing. It had originally been dozens of centimeters long, but now it was only the size of 2 fingers. Black dragons, Qin Zhao said. This thing wasn't valuable to Qin Zhao. But to other people and even Bifla, it was a very rare treasure. Bifla didn't reject it hypocritically. Without another word, he closed the box and put it away. Tell me, what do you want from me? Chapter 22:11. What's up with your super perception? This was Chen's only motive for Bifla. Over the past few days, Chen Xian had been studying Bifla. He wanted to know what method or magic Bifla used to obtain such a powerful perception. Bifla closed the gift box and tossed it back to Chen. This isn't enough. What do you need? Shangqing realm perception, Bifla said. You have a big appetite, but I'm the one who's at a disadvantage. Although your magic is very rare, I can still find other people or similar methods. However, there are only a handful of people in this world who have mastered the Shangqing state, and each of them has their own unique insights. Everyone's insights are priceless, so I'm the one who's at a disadvantage. Bifla wasn't in a hurry to speak, even though he desired it very much. However, he still didn't speak. Whoever spoke first would be more important to the person. The price he would have to pay would be greater. Chen also cupped his fists and held his chin. He quietly waited for Bifla's reply. Bifla had the same attitude. After a while, Bifla finally spoke first. How about this? Other than telling you the trick of the perception spell, I'll promise you one more thing. As long as it doesn't endanger the fire worship sect, you can ask for anything. It'll be valid forever, Bifla said. I'll be there whenever you need me. It was already rare for someone as proud as Bifla to promise to be there whenever he was called. Chen rubbed his chin and considered Bifla's condition. Given Bifla's personality, this condition should be his bottom line. If Chen rejected it, he wouldn't ask for a greater price. Chen thought about it and said, sure. Remember your words. I'll be there whenever you call me. I've never gone back on my promise, Bifla said calmly. That's for the best. Chen nodded. Bifla had a large business. Chen wasn't afraid that he would go back on his words. My Shangqing realm is divided into two parts. The first part is to obtain a small world, which is also a domain, Chen said. The small world is actually one with the entire world. When I obtained the small world, I felt that the entire world was actually a giant's meridians. Chen didn't hide anything. He told Bifla everything. Bifla was like a studious student. He greedily absorbed the knowledge Chen gave him. Only when Chen was done did Bifla speak up and ask his own question. Why do you think that the heaven and earth patterns are meridians? This should have something to do with my undergraduate profession. I'm a medical student. My first instinct was that it was meridians. There's no direct evidence. Bifla nodded, acknowledging Chen's answer. Then, Bifla asked more questions. As a spiritualist below the Shangqing realm, Bifla could not really feel or understand it. However, this did not hinder his harvest. Some things could only be obtained through accumulation. For example, an epiphany. Although the epiphany happened in an instant, it still required a lot of sacrifices. A baby cannot suddenly understand quantum mechanics. In order to master those obscure things, one must first have a huge reserve of knowledge. It was the same with magic. Are you satisfied with my comprehension? Bifla nodded. Very satisfied. This is an unexpected harvest. Just like how Chen wouldn't hide his enlightenment. Bifla wouldn't purposely say that it was worthless just to lower the price. Then it's my turn, Bifla said. What's your understanding of perception? Perception is more like the feedback of the senses. Ordinary senses consist of 5 senses: hearing, sight, touch, taste, and smell. Spiritualists have one more. Through the release of magic power, they gain supersenses. Bifla nodded. I don't need to explain your basic knowledge. Both you and I rely on supersenses. Even your little world is a type of supersenses. My perception is actually supersenses, not magic. How is that possible? I feel that my little world's coverage is already larger than old Zhang's and 23rd Gen's combined. How can your super senses cover a larger area than mine? This is what I'm going to say next, Bifla said. Actually, there's another name for ESP, Bifla said. It's called psionic sense. Just like what you said, psionic sense is the release of magic power and then feedback to the body to sense the changes in the outside world or certain information. This kind of psionic sense is very similar to radar. Chen nodded and didn't interrupt Bifla's explanation. My trick is to dilute the mana and then disperse it. For example, a square kilometer needs 100 mana coverage to be able to sense it clearly. I divide this square kilometer into a square and then place a small amount of mana in the four corners of the square. The mana in these four corners interacts and outlines a radar network. Wait. Let me think. Chen interrupted Bifla's explanation and fell into deep thought. After a while, Chen spoke again. So you're saying that most spiritualists and I have the wrong way of sensing? I can't say that it's completely wrong. It's just that you haven't found the trick and technique. Also, to most spiritualists, their sensing range is very limited. The difference between 5 and 10 square meters is meaningless. They rely more on sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch to sense the world. You and I are different. We have magic power that is hundreds or even thousands of times greater than normal spiritualists. That's why the difference in perception is reflected. Bifla paused for a second before continuing. Also, although my distributed sensing method can cover a wider area, it also has a shortcoming, which is that my perception isn't very clear. It's like the pixel ratio of a phone's camera function from 20 years ago, and your little world perception is the pixel ratio of a phone's camera function from 20 years later. I understand. It's sacrificing clarity in exchange for sensing limit. That's right. That's the logic. As long as you master this method, your sensing range can increase by dozens of times. If I have enough magic power, I can sense the entire city, right? Theoretically, of course, but do you have that much magic power? Chapter 22:12. On the other side, Ruik Des had also left the swamp with Mado Shinji. Mr. Des, why did they threaten you with me? Mado Shinji asked. Because you are my daughter. Ruik Des did not look at Mado Shinji, but walked forward. Mado Shinji's footsteps stopped, and she stood in place with a stunned expression. She looked at Ruik Des's back in a daze. This is impossible. We are completely different. Nationality, hair color, even our appearance. Although they were both white, they were not completely of the same race. Mado Shinji was more inclined to the Eastern European race, while Ruik Des was obviously of Latin American descent. It was impossible for anyone to think that they were father and daughter. We are not father and daughter in the traditional sense. Ruik Des stopped and turned his head. I've never wanted you to know about this. You're just a continuation of me. We're not related by blood, so you don't have to take it to heart. How can I not take it to heart? One day, someone suddenly told me that he was my father. No one would not mind, Madwa Shinji said emotionally, and even her voice was a lot louder. For you, there will be no change. Ruik Des's tone was still calm. I'm not asking for any change now, I just want to know the truth. You are the child of my soul, Ruik Des said. I don't understand. You can think of it as another way to reproduce. What about my original parents? They are your parents, Ruik Des said. And my relationship with you is not accurate to say that we are father and daughter. It is more like a relative and also my heir, provided that you are willing. You mean I will inherit your identity in the future? Or your magic? Everything, including my identity. But I don't know magic at all. Just not now. As my relative, you have the same talent as me. Then can I be stronger than those two guys? Yes, Ruik Des said. What should I do? Those two guys were completely modified and even succeeded. Although they themselves are very special, I still managed to obtain a lot of data from their modifications. As long as there are enough materials, I can concoct an even more perfect enhancement potion. This is also what you need now. Stronger and safer. Will I be able to surpass them after undergoing the modification experiment of the perfect enhancement potion? No, they're like me. We're both spiritualists. If we only surpass them in terms of strength, we won't be able to defeat them. Ruik Des said, if you want to surpass them, you can only surpass them in all aspects, in both strength and magic. But I don't have any magic foundation right now. As long as you are prepared, you can gain magical power at any time. Where did the magic power come from? You and my ancestors. Before you and me, there were many servants of the pharaoh, who, like me, passed down their inheritance as relatives. In the future, you will also pass down your inheritance in the same way. They also left behind a lot of property, and only you, as a relative, are qualified to see it. Ruik Des said. Madwa Shinji quickly accepted her identity. She did not reject this identity. On the contrary, she felt that this identity was easier to accept. At the same time, it made her even more happy. She was finally no longer just an ordinary person. She could stand next to Ruik Dales in a more intimate capacity. Now, I'll take you to the new base to rest. Tonight, I'll show you the real world of magic, a world that only exists in fantasy. Wendy, are you ready? Zhang Tianyi came to Wendy's side. Wendy opened his eyes lazily and nodded slightly. He looked tired and sleepy, as if he hadn't had enough sleep. Then let's start the second trial, Zhang Tianyi said. I hope the lunatics from the Hermit Order won't appear. They will appear, Wendy said. Their plan is very simple, Wendy said. They pretended to be clever and misled us, hoping that we would mistakenly think that their goal was the manufacturing method of the Anubis construct. In fact, their goal was the Star of Brilliance and to create chaos. Are you sure their goal is the Star of Brilliance? And not to mislead us again. It's not difficult to guess their goal. Everyone knows that the Star of Brilliance is in my hands, and a few years ago, the chairman of the Hermit Order met with an accident while modifying himself, causing his mana source to collapse. Now that he needs a new mana source, the Star of Brilliance is their only choice. If that's the case, why don't you leave the Star of Brilliance with me for now? I guarantee that no one will be able to take it away. Wendy glanced at Zhang Tianyi, then silently closed his eyes and said nothing else. Stingy. Zhang Tianyi curled his lips. Wendy did not continue the conversation. If the item was left with Zhang Tianyi, no one would be able to take it away. But the problem was, would he return it to him? That was the ancient god artifact, the Star of Brilliance. It possessed unlimited mana, and the user could even have a small world similar to a domain. To anyone, it was a priceless treasure. That was why Wendy would never leave it with Zhang Tianyi for safekeeping. From a certain point of view, Zhang Tianyi was even more of a bastard than those lunatics from the Hermit Order. Forget it, I'll deal with those bastards from the Hermit Order, you just need to focus on the second trial. As long as you're by my side, the people from the Hermit Order won't appear, and the most likely method they'll use is to lure you away from me, then ambush me. Then what do you think? If they want to lure the tiger away from the mountain, then let's do as they wish. That's too risky. Even if you're strong, you're still not strong enough, Zhang Tianyi said. As the world's #1 alchemist, Wendy's strength was unquestionable. Even if he wasn't an expert in combat, his level was still there. Dealing with a bunch of elementary school students wasn't a problem. As long as it wasn't Zhang Tianyi or the 23rd generation, Wendy was confident that he could go against the people from the Hermit Order. And even if he couldn't win, he couldn't be defeated either. Wendy was first and foremost a spirit controller, so most spells that could cause diseases and curses would be ineffective against him. Not to mention, he still had the Star of Brilliance. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.